All meeting in order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and with justice for all. Give me a second. Following statement may be recorded. Adequate notice of meeting provided by adoption of appropriate resolution listed as 2023 meeting date. Adoption of supplemental resolution modifying the copy of contract amendment. Copy of said resolution in the record will be standing by following copy of the court office and posting on municipal building bulletin board and by directory to send in to the minutes. Okay, roll call. Mr. Townsend?
Yes, President.
Belcher?
Here.
Thoreau?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz? No, Mr. Parker?
Here.
Mr. Don? Here. Care about it. Okay. Okay, the minutes from the January 12th meeting were sent to everybody. Anybody have any comments or corrections?
No. You voted the minutes?
The minutes of the January 12th. You want to make a motion?
Motion to approve, minutes at 1/12/23.
Okay. Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. The roll call. Mr. Townsend? Belcher?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Parker and Mr. Don weren't there, so, and myself, yes. Okay. So we have now coming before us, old business, 2 applications from Holy Hospital. One PB 2013 Holy Hospital, one PB 2022-14 Holy Military Park. Wendy, what's your plan?
My plan is to start again with the Child Care Center application, which is PB 2022-14. And if you don't mind, if I sit here, I have a little bit of a foot issue.
No problem.
That would be okay with you? Thank you.
As long as we can hear you.
All right.
Can you just clarify, for the purpose of the record and the public, why you are starting again?
Yes. So, we were here, again, for the record, my name is Wendy Berger, the law firm of Cole Shops. We were here for this application in October. We started our presentation and our hearing in October, and at that hearing, there was a tape of the proceedings, and I understand that there were some issues with the tape when people went to listen to it afterwards. Based upon that fact, we are going to start again with our presentation. So the record is clear. It's clear for anyone who wants to listen to it. So we are starting our presentation again, anew.
Thank you. So we're going to start with all exhibits. Wendy? We'll start all exhibits at
All-
A1.
Everything all over
Any
again.
stipulations as they
Yes.
come up will be reviewed
Yes.
and put on the record.
Yes,
So that it's, okay.
yes.
Very well. And we also have, in addition to Ms. Berger, Mr. Beto's co-counsel, although he's not present, presenting in that. He is representing the applicant. And we also have Mr. Simon, do you want to put your appearance on the record? Actually, you don't have a microphone. Can we get him a microphone?
I can just up here. Right, awesome.
Can you hear me? Up? Can.
Sure can.
I have my own monitor, first time in 32 years. Good evening, my name is Rob Simon, I'm an attorney with Herald Law. I am here on behalf of certain individuals. I will read them off for the record. Michael Ackerman and Rachel Kay, 692 Grange Road, Teaneck. Daniel Mellon and Ashira Loki, 135 Emerlinda Avenue, Teaneck. Rebecca and Shalom Bronstein, 736 Grange Road, Teaneck. Georgina and Yoa Asante, 140 Chadwick Road, Teaneck. And Merrill and Joseph Mark, 166 Norma Road, Teaneck. Thank you. Thank you.
And we understand from the last meeting, there are members of the public that may be attorneys, but they're really acting as members of the public. And we will certainly give you your ability to question any of the witnesses during the course of the hearing. Mr. Simon will go first with any cross-examination, and then we'll open, just like the last time, to any members of the public to question.
May I proceed?
Yes.
With regard to the application, we have submitted to the planning board office, planning board secretary, a copy of the proof of publication and the proof of service. Mr. Kelly, would you like those marked in the record?
Yes, I
as
would.
exhibits? So the proof of publication from the record is sworn to and subscribed by the record on January 23rd, January 13th, 2023. And the proof of mailing was mailed on January 12th, 2023. And the cover letter to the board secretary was dated January 13th, 2023. Do you want to mark them all A1?
We'll mark that as A1. Anybody want to be heard as to service? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman. Anyone want to be heard as to notice?
Last call to the public, for asking.
Seeing none, Mr. Chairman.
Over here.
Come on, Mr. Rubenstein.
Alan Rubenstein, AlanRubenstein. The question on the notice was talked about a variance requested for lot coverage, and it mentions, I believe it was 83% lot coverage. Is that accurate? Is what you're asking for variance?
That's not on this application. We're talking about the gravel lot. And this
He's asking about notice. He's asking about notice, as I'm asking.
Okay, well,
We got to go.
why don't we let Mr. Rubenstein finish, and then we'll,
No, he asked me a question.
well, he should be forwarding it to the chair. Ask the chair that question. We'll close.
There was a question, there was a statement on the notice talking about the variance of, I believe it was 83%, I pull it out, I believe it said 83% for lot coverage. I'm asking that, are they requesting that? And of course, these applications talk about the notices that were sent, and that's included in the notices.
Okay. Ms. Berger, can you respond?
The application representing at this time on the child care center, that's not part of the application on the child care center. That's the second application, which will be
Okay,
received.
but they're both on the agenda, so answer the question.
And you also
You're dealing with-
notice for both of them.
Right, but we're doing one at a time.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
but
but
answer the question.
you notice both of them, so let's.
What does that do with the lawyer? Just answer the question about the application.
Yes. Give me a second, I'll pull the other file out.
No problem.
Just so you understand, Mr. Rubenstein, that's the second application.
I understand.
And probably won't be heard tonight anyway. So if you want to move forward without it, that's fine. If you need your answer, we'll take the time to give you the answer.
That's correct. It says 83% on the notice, as long as we're talking about the notices.
And what's the application that was stated?
Lot coverage, 75%.
What application? Is there a PB number that is reflected?
It doesn't really have PB numbers on the notices that we received.
For the record, it's PB 2022-13, and you are correct, it says 83% for property maximum lot coverage. But that is not for the first application.
That's okay.
The answer is it's for the parking lot.
Right.
It's a parking lot, and that is.
Anything else, sir?
That is it, thank you.
You got it. Yes.
Let me just,
I don't know if that microphone is on. They muted you quickly. Go ahead.
That's better.
Hold on.
So-
Are we okay?
yeah, I'm just bringing it.
No problem.
So as a clarification to,
Hold on.
what's that?
Go ahead. Keep going.
As a clarification and follow-up to Mr. Rubenstein and Ms. Berger, so the overall site plan for what I'll call the child care center application, which is what we're here for, does reference the proposed temporary gravel parking lot and future staging area. And I'm surmising, based on the interaction between Ms. Berger and Mr. Rubenstein, that the excessive lot coverage is due to the proposed temporary gravel parking lot and future staging area. Is that, and the reason why I'm raising it now is that because it's part of the child care center application, I guess the question is whether the coverage variance is going to be addressed during the child care center application, because if the child care center application is granted, and it's granted with the temporary gravel parking lot and future staging area as part of the approved site plan, that in and of itself would presumably trigger the lot coverage variance. So I'm raising it because I think that there needs to be some clarification in terms of the variance relief that is being requested, or that's required, I should say, by the applicant vis-a-vis the two applications, given that the applicant is proceeding first with the child care. So,
I'd be happy to do something.
I think they've been noticed in any event, either way. So the board has jurisdiction, which I think from the notice perspective is the most important thing. How they choose to present it is fine. They're going in tandem. And I would anticipate you're going to go right into the other application after you complete this one.
Correct.
so then, Mr. Kelly, if that's the case, then is the approval, I'm going to call it the first application, is the child care application. Is the child care center application approval contingent on approval of the second application?
No,
Because-
there's,
It's contingent. They have to present their case, and then we'll make a determination. So
Right, but the point,
Hold on. This question is answered. First application is on for 14.
Right.
Are we gonna vote on that before we get 13? Or we can have 13 also and then vote on it?
yeah, I don't know the answer to that until
No,
it's presented.
he's
So.
asking that because
we had submitted,
the asking that is basically getting an objection, that, correct if I'm wrong, is that you either want this straightened out first, or if you hear the other one, not vote on it, we have a second one. Is that correct?
yes, because the plans that were submitted for the child care application contemplate the excessive lot coverage. I think there just needs to be some clarification.
Go ahead.
if I could, if you look at your zoning ordinance number 20-2022, it requires you to put the entire zoning for the whole property, the whole campus, on the plan. So when you look at the plan and the zoning chart, it has to have all of that on it. We are doing two separate applications. The first application has to have is with regard to the child care. That's one application. We filed two separate applications. Second application is with regard to the gravel parking lot. They are two separate and apart. But based upon your requirement of what has to be shown, it's shown on both because it's required.
So here, I'm sorry. So therein lies the rub, as they say. The way the ordinance is set up, there are zoning requirements that apply to the entire H zone. And then there are other zoning requirements that are specific to H1, H2, H3, H4. One of the only requirements that is called Gestalt H zone is lot coverage or impervious coverage. Because of that, I believe that the variance for lot coverage has to be addressed as part of the daycare center application, because if you approve the daycare center application, at that moment in time, you are now approving the project, the H project, with excessive impervious coverage because it's part of the plan, unless the way the applicant wishes to proceed is that they're going to present the daycare center application in its entirety and then put it aside and then present the second application for the parking lot and then ask for a vote on both.
I would beg to differ. We have filed two separate applications. Your experts did not raise that as their review of the application as that needed. We are asking for two votes. We submitted the application as required in the manner required by your ordinance, because the manner required, so we have to have everything displayed for the entire campus. It doesn't mean that we're doing work on the entire campus. It means we just had to have all the information for the entire campus, so we did that. It also contemplates that development will be done in phases, and it states that in the ordinance. So I disagree with what's being raised. We would like to proceed with our application and get our testimony in with regard to what we are proposing and what's part of our application this evening.
Well, you're certainly going to get the opportunity to present what you want to present this evening, but the ordinance, I don't believe, requires a separate application for each phase. It allows phasing. And I think the fact that they kind of crisscross, so to speak, you have parking lot information on one plan and vice versa, which, before you shake your head, maybe hear what I'm saying. It has merit. And the other point was the parking lot was supposed to be first, and you asked to carry the parking lot because Stonefield's report wasn't done. We accommodated.
If I may read something from the ordinance, and I'm quoting, this is ordinance 22-2022. Application requirements. Any application for development for all or any portion of the H zone shall be submitted as a phased development or as a separate development application for each phase, for each building and/or improvements within each phase in the nature of a preliminary site plan application. Each such application shall describe how the proposed development relates to the phasing of the development pursuant to the overall H zone. So we're supposed to describe the whole, and then we can file an application with each phase. We which is what we've done.
Yeah, I think respectfully that Ms. Berger is conflating two concepts. One concept, which she's entirely correct about, and she's appropriately quoting the ordinance, has to do with submission of a site plan application, and that a site plan application can presumably be submitted in phases. What is missing is the fact that, as I stated earlier, you have 3, 4 provisions, regulations in the ordinance that apply to the entirety of the H zone. Lot area, lot coverage, building coverage, parking, and there may be more, but those are just off the top of my head. That if you trigger the need for variance approval for one of those 4 categories as part of your phased approach or full approach, as Wendy appropriately stated, that's up to the applicant. But regardless of how you do it, if the application, as in this case, triggers the need for a lot coverage variance, and keep in mind, that parking lot is an existing condition. It's not as if it is a grass field, and at this moment in time, it doesn't trigger any type of variance approval. And under those circumstances, actually, I would agree without sounding like a zealous advocate, I would actually agree completely with Wendy. If it was a grass area and it wasn't, upon approval, going to be impervious coverage, then maybe she's correct, because then we wouldn't be getting to the need to trigger that variance. But it's an existing condition right now, just like the parking, as proposed, would be an existing condition, in part. So I think that for those reasons, certainly with regard to the lot coverage that Mr. Rubenstein raised, I do think that if the applicant is seeking an approval on the child care center application as a phased H2 application, then it needs to include that variance relief as requested, because it's an existing condition.
Can I just address one point? If this was a permanent condition, you'd have more open. But we know, and you know, based on the plans and based on what's been applied for down the road, what the plan there is, that that's a temporary parking situation. So it's not a long-term permanent situation. There's going to be a building there, parking in the building. That situation is there to get the stuff that's got to be done to build. Right. It's not like we're approving this as a permanent thing. And again, you can find out from them what their plan is. I don't think they're doing it 20 years from now. So you can put a time frame on it that if they don't by a certain point in time, they have to come back before us.
I think, though,
If I also may add,
2 points. The lot, whether it is temporary parking or something else, the contemplation is that it's always going to be coverage. It's always going to be a form of coverage. And so that's one reason why you have to address the variance right up front. Number 2,
Well, that's not true. Because I think in the plans there's a 3-story, 4-story parking garage under a building, which means that coverage is going to be significantly smaller than the current coverage is everywhere. They knocked down the building that was there, they bought it, and they had a parking. They're going to build a building there that's going to have parking underneath it, they're going to have to break.
right, but-
What's the second one?
right, but the second point is, and actually this begs the second point, which is that the fact that they're asking for variance relief, even for a temporary condition, first of all, there's nothing in the ordinance that says that if you only need something for a certain period of time, then either you don't need a variance or it's a lesser standard. A variance is a variance. They notice for it, it's in their development application for purposes of gravel parking lot. All I'm saying, I'm not trying to be argumentative at all I'm saying is that under the ordinance and under the law, based on the way that the governing body determined to draft the ordinance, if you are having lot coverage requirements apply to the entirety of the H zone, and keep in mind, another thing I neglected to mention, it's my fault, is that the ordinance does not provide separate requirements for building coverage and lot area for each of these 4 zones. And I think that is significant because that is why you need to, if any of those zones, any of those phase developments trigger a variance for those categories, it has to be dealt with during that application. It can't be set, you can't say, well, we're going to deal with that later. Because look what happens. If you grant the approval for the child care, it's at a moment in time when you have excessive coverage. And you wouldn't be allowed to, the applicant wouldn't be allowed to get to proceed with your site plan because you have an outstanding violation that hasn't been cured, regardless of whether it's a back-to-back application. And frankly, it's silly because
Doesn't that argument negate the ability to bring it in phases? I mean,
No.
following your argument out, they have to come in with, and I'm not even sure the hospital knows what they do. But taking your argument, which I accept, to the end, I don't think they could possibly phase it.
they can absolutely phase every zone if they wanted to. The difference is that the first application, they need to get a coverage variance based on what they're showing. Look, if they want to reduce the coverage so they don't need a variance, that's better for everybody. And I encourage them to do that. But until that happens, if they're presenting a development application for any of the phases, and the result of, if they get an approval based on that application, if you look at the plan that they got approved, and it says, wait a second, I have excessive coverage, that's no good.
Is the argument that the first application that they want to propose pushes them over the limit already, or only the combination of the 2 applications push them over?
No, the first application has a large parking lot.
It's clear to me that the ordinance contemplated phasing. It's written that way.
I don't think he disagrees with that. He's saying the way you're doing it triggers another variance.
And we don't believe it triggers another variance. We have put in the coverage that's required for what we're doing for our project. When we do the next application, that's a different phase and a different coverage. We put the requirements in your ordinance. Your zoning officer reviewed the application. Your planner reviewed the application. Your engineers reviewed the application. And none of them have brought that up as an issue. None of them interpret the ordinance as Mr. Simon is reading.
Look, if they get an approval of the daycare center application, you have an existing parking lot there right now. What's the coverage? The coverage is in excess of what's required in the zone. It's very simple.
We have an existing parking lot.
Right, but you're doing other improvements, particularly in this case, in the H2 zone. It's triggering the total.
Just for the board's application, if I could.
When
The existing gravel parking lot, which is a separate existing gravel parking lot exists today, and all the other improvements that are on the hospital today, and the coverage proposed by the new child care center, all equal 68%. And the ordinance allows 75%. So we included the existing gravel parking lot in that 68% coverage.
Okay. Any comment to that?
I don't really understand. If that's the case, and if they get an approval of the child care center application, and they walk away, and they don't proceed with the second application, and their representation is that they're not exceeding after the first application.
Hold on. Would you agree with that if you get approval on the first one, you'll immediately continue with the second one?
You proceed with the hearing here.
Okay. How's that? You want it writing? No. I mean,
I don't doubt it.
They're hearing this one and moving on to the next one.
No, I was actually going to say that if they don't trigger a variance at the time that a vote's taken for the child care center application, then they don't trigger a variance. That's simple.
Exactly.
But we just want verification that in fact, if the second, excuse me,
If we put the testimony on, you'll get verification.
I'm comfortable going forward with it. I think, it's on. Get me? All right, I'm comfortable over here, go forward. Wendy, can I assume that you're not going to get to a vote tonight?
I would assume so.
Okay, so why don't we get started, and I think we can work this out, we can have it next week, okay? So we can sit here and discuss this another hour and a half, and if that's what you want to do, that's fine, I know you don't want it. So, we heard you heard them, we heard everything, we got a department to look at it, between now and next meeting, and we'll talk through the meeting, okay? It's gotta be real.
My initial question, as you asked us about the notice, my question is the request for a variance for 83% on the notice, is that accurate, or based on what Ms. Berger said, was a mistake? So my question really is on the notice, is that inaccurate, is the notice accurate, or is there a mistake on the notice? Mr. Kelly?
I think Amy's already answered it, she said it's, so that's all we can go. That's what she's responding.
That they're seeking 83%?
That's what's in the notice, correct?
No. For the 6 lots, that coverage number is for the 6 lots that are part of the gravel lot. It's not the overall campus number, it's the 6 lots. Because it's in phases. When we get to that application, we'll be happy to explain it.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The application this evening is with regard to Holy Name Medical Center. It's an application for a child care center. The child care center has been existing on the Holy Name campus for many years. I think it's over 35 years. It's an existing facility. The plan is to build a new child care center on the campus and relocate the child care center from the existing facility on the campus. In order to do so, there must be a few buildings that are going to be removed and other site improvements. The blocks that are part of this application are Block 3003, Lot 2, Lot 3, Lot 4, sorry, I'm losing my place here. Lot 4, Lot 8 through 14, I believe. Yes, 8 through 14. There are no variances being requested for this application. The use is permitted We comply with height, we comply with setback. All bulk requirements are complied with. Additionally, as part of this application, we are seeking to make changes to the existing parking lot on the campus. We are adding parking into that lot and expanding it. We are also restriping some spaces and we're making some site improvements. One of the major parts of this application is that there's an existing driveway that goes from the rear of the hospital campus out to Grange Road. As part of this application, we're proposing that that driveway be closed. There'll be no circulation out to Grange Road any longer. The area will be landscaped. There'll be fencing put in, and there are specific requirements as to the fencing, landscaping, where it must go, etc. in the ordinance. We are going to be complying with those ordinance requirements. And also, the municipality has adopted ordinance number 23-2022 that vacated a portion of Chadwick Road. You will see that the cul-de-sac that is going to be created on Chadwick Road is as a result of that street vacation. It will then prohibit Chadwick Road being a through street from Grange Road out to Cedar Lane. And that is, you'll see that the design was based upon that, and based upon the design, there is extensions within the campus in the parking lot of circulation roadways that are required as part of the H-zone ordinance. And it's required to implement that in certain phases, and we are doing that pursuant to the requirements of the ordinance. So I would like at this time to call my first witness.
Okay?
Yes, and just again, if I didn't mention it, the child care facility that exists today and will be relocated to the new building is only for employees. I'd like to call my first witness, which is the project engineer.
Why don't you go stand over there? Wendy?
I'm sorry.
Why don't you stand over here for a minute?
Bring that, which one?
Leave your connections, you have your hand.
Sir, can you state your name for the record, please?
Daniel Lamotte, LA, MOTHE, with Lepaki Associates, 12 Route 17, Paramus, New Jersey.
All right, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I did.
Thank you.
Yes, could you just tell the board your background, experience, qualification, and who you're employed by?
Wendy, we did that with the last meeting, duly.
Yeah, but we're doing this as if we haven't
I'm just
analyzed.
saying, duly accepted. If you want to do it anyway, fine. As chairman, I agree.
As long as he's accepted.
I just said it, duly accepted.
Oh,
Thank you.
Mr. Simon?
I have no objection.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I owe you one.
For the record, could you identify what you have placed on the board so we can mark it for the record?
Mr. Lamotte, before we go through this exercise again, can you just turn it a little bit so the public can see it, in addition to the board, maybe slide it back?
Can I make a suggestion that since the applicant's team is currently the closest to the exhibit, it may make some sense to maybe put the exhibit in the middle so that the public has a better view of it?
In the middle where?
Between, you know, in front of the lecture. No, essentially, you can see it too.
I think that's it.
Perhaps we could reference the page so we can look on our.
Wendy?
Yes.
Any documents that are being put up, if we have plans here for board members, I'd like you to tell us where they are so board members to see.
Which one will you like?
Can you identify, I just heard you mark it as A2. You kind of have to identify what that is.
So, this one is exhibit A2. Excuse me one second. Can I just take a picture so I can see it?
Can't talk. Do me a favor. Can you, excuse me, take that and put it right next to the table. All right? Just stay in the block. So you stay where you were there. Guys, relax. I'm doing it. Relax. All right, turn it a little bit towards here. Mark, can you see it? Can you turn it a little bit? Turn it a little bit toward the front. And let it play with it. Keep it going. Good.
Dan, when you speak, you have to put the microphone either to your mouth or see it standing.
Be loud and clear. You let me know when you're ready.
And if you can identify what A2 is.
You tell
before
us
it's
what's
started.
We all good with the easel? Okay, A2 is a rendered copy of the existing condition plan, which is the third sheet in the set of 11 sheets. It's dated August 19th, 2022, and it's been revised through October 17th, 2022. The difference between this plan and the one that's in the submitted sets is that it's been colored in. It also has a few layers that have been turned off for clarification purposes, such as utilities, the existing grading and contours, but it shows the overall layout of the existing hospital campus. What you see here, as in the rendering, the light green tone are really the landscaped areas, the lawn areas. The white tone is the existing parking garage and parking areas. You'll see the large hospital building, which is a brown tone, as well as the existing structures in and around the campus, the hospital campus. You'll see that the hospital is centrally located on the campus. There are also existing residential dwellings in and around to the west of the hospital. There are a total of 3 residential dwellings that front on Chadwick Road, which runs along the northerly side of the hospital campus. Along the west side of the campus is Grange Road, and there is also a normal court, which also has 5 additional residential dwellings, and there's 1 residential dwelling on Grange Road. There's also a garage and a 1-story building that are located on the westerly side of the hospital. There are other existing structures.
Excuse me, you said garage, do you parking lot?
What's it? There's a garage that's within the parking lot behind the west of the building. And then
You pointed to a parking lot, that big white thing there.
there's a white parking lot in the back of the west. The garage is in this area here.
And that's a building that's planned to be removed as part of this application.
Yes.
So again, could you just point out, as part of the child care application, the expansion of the parking lot, what buildings are planned to be removed?
Okay, so what we're removing the 3 existing dwellings and the existing garage that are currently located on the northerly portion of the lot, which are these structures in this area here, which are on the side of Chadwick Road. We are also proposing to move one of the dwellings at the end of Norma Court. The existing residential dwelling that fronts on Grange Road is going to remain, as well as the other 4 dwellings that are on Norma Court. To the top of the page, or the westerly side, is Grange Road. To the northerly page, you'll see that there's the Chadwick Road frontage, and then there's also Cedar Lane at the northeast corner. Along the bottom of the page, or the easterly side, is Teaneck Road, and to the south is Vandalinda. And you'll see there's many driveway access points off of the surrounding road system. And we are located in the H zone, which is which has 4 sub-zones in it. The top zone from H1 down to H4, H1 starting on the westerly side near Grange Road, and at the bottom along Teaneck Road is the H4 subzone. The project that we're proposing falls primarily in the H1 and H2 subdistricts. I guess I'll move to the proposal. This is 38, right?
Yes.
Mark that.
You two are going on talking to one another. Please identify the marking and the last page, last page, so we can keep up with it.
Did I hear you correctly say H3?
Yes.
We need to set up the record and we can start with that.
Could you identify the record?
Yeah, so A3 is the 6th sheet in the site plan set. It's entitled the Site Layout Plan. That's also dated August 19th, 2022, and last revised December 27th, 2022. And with this...
I'm sorry, I missed it. So it's a site layout plan,
Site Layout Plan, 6th sheet of the set.
right, revision date?
The last revision date was December 27th, 2022.
Thank you.
Again, this plan is sheet 6 that has been similarly rendered, where again, the green tones are the landscaped areas. You'll see a slightly darker, different green tone, which represents where the playground is. You'll also see some yellow toned areas, which represent more of the sidewalk, hardscape, like concrete, pavers. You'll see the orange tone again, that represents the existing hospital building at the bottom of the page, or the east side of the back parking lot. The other orange structures you see are the residential dwellings that I mentioned from the first exhibit that are going to remain. You'll see the one dwelling that's on the top of the page at front on Grange Road, and you'll also see the 4 dwellings that are going to remain on Normal Court. As for a quick overview of this project here, we are proposing to relocate the existing child care facility that's inside of the building, the hospital building that is, for the employees. And then we're going to construct a new child care building that's going to be frontage on Chadwick Road. We're also proposing to vacate a portion of Chadwick Road and create a cul-de-sac so that we eliminate the through traffic on Chadwick Road. We are also proposing to remove the driveway out to Grange Road, and we're creating, when we create the cul-de-sac, we're also going to create a loop road that keeps the circulation of the traffic within the hospital campus and eliminates the traffic circulation out to the neighboring properties. So then what that will do is it will eliminate and minimize the amount of cross traffic that are people coming to the hospital that park on Grange Road and the other neighboring residential roads. It'll focus all the traffic circulation within the hospital campus. And you'll hear more of that testimony from the traffic engineer. We're also proposing to reconstruct the parking area in the back of the lot to the west of the hospital, to construct 104 new parking spaces, which are going to be dedicated to the doctors and patients of the facility. The advantages to this whole redevelopment plan is to provide more efficient services for the uses that are on that westerly portion of the hospital. The facilities that are within that area of the hospital are the labor and delivery, the emergency department, physical therapy, and the cancer center. The doctors and patients for that facility will then get additional parking to make it more convenient for their uses to access the hospital site. For the child care portion of the building, it is designed to fully conform with the H zone criteria. The child care building is designed to fully conform with the H-zone criteria, and it's going to be primarily located in the H1, which is the westerlymost sub-district, and the H2 zone. A very small portion is also located in the H3 sub-district, but that is really just an area where we're proposing some valet improvements. So the child care building is going to be a standalone building that is 1,600 square feet. It's 202 stories. The only one main entrance to the building is in the south portion of the building. There's going to be no main access off of Chadwick Road. There'll be no drop-off or deliveries coming from Chadwick Road. Everything will be coming from the internal circulation of the hospital's parking lot. So all the focus for the child care building will be on the south end of the building. We'll have the main entrance on that side. The only access points to Chadwick that are going to exist is an emergency exit walkway out to Chadwick Road for the purposes of safety for the child care building. We did previously have a sidewalk that connected the Chadwick sidewalk system to the hospital, but we removed that from concerns that we've heard. There will be a sidewalk that just encloses around Chadwick Road for pedestrians, and there'll be no connection to the hospital walkway.
And those sidewalks and walkways are being constructed as required by the H-zone ordinance, is that correct?
That's correct.
And just for edification again, could you just go back and show where the H1 zone line is, where the H2 zone line is, and where the H3 zone line is?
So the H2 zone line is along the top of the parking lot. So there's no parking lot improvements within the H1 zone.
So within the H1 zone, the only thing you propose is to remove the driveway out to Grange Road, to landscape that area, and to put the required fencing in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So within the H1 portion of the zone, there's no parking lot improvements. As we said, we're going to actually remove the driveway connection to Grange Road. We're going to propose additional landscaping, buffering, and a 6-foot solid fence around the perimeter of the parking area.
And the improvement for the child care center building, that's within the H2 zone, is that correct?
Yes, the child care building is within the H2 zone, which again starts at the westernmost portion of the parking lot and ends close to the hospital. Again, and so most of the improvements for the child care building all fall within that H2 zone.
With regard to that area, if you could just be more specific about the landscaping being proposed?
Well, we have a landscape architect, we'll get into the details, but what I will say is it's a solid evergreen buffer that will comply with the ordinance requirements for the redevelopment zone. But he'll get into more detail on the landscape.
Yes, Mr. Chair and board members, we do have a specific landscape architect who will testify with regard to all the landscaping as the requirements and compliance. With regard to the child care, just so we're clear on that, the size of the child care building footprint is 8,000 square feet.
I'm sorry, misspoke. It's 16,000 square feet total.
Total.
Yes. 8,000 per floor.
Per floor.
Right.
Plus, you have a dark green area on the plan, is that correct?
Yes, so the dark green area represents the playground area, and that's 3,580 square feet. It's enclosed with a 5-foot.
Just hold it, you might again.
And it's enclosed with a 5-foot high solid volume fence. There's no lighting proposed in the area of the playground. There is also going to be a play service that's going to be a rubberized service that complies with all applicable child care playground requirements. In the drainage house, we assume that surface will be impervious coverage. However, on the coverage exhibit, we mistakenly left it off, but we have added it. Let me just talk to the coverage exhibit real quick.
And just to be clear, the building is 16,000. It's not exactly 8,000 per floor, but total it equals.
Yeah, it's total 8,000 generally.
16,000 total, correct?
Correct. So this is that mark this as A4?
Yes. To identify what A4 is for the record?
A4 is one of one sheet. It's dated October 5th, 2022, and it's been revised on today, January 26th, 2023. And what this basically is, it shows the calculation of the impervious coverage for the campus, which totals 68%. You'll see here that the revision that has been made on today, actually, we realized that we did not initially include the playground surface as impervious. So this has been revised to include that. We saw because it's relative to the campus. What's that?
We have that page in here?
You don't have that page yet. This is exhibit 4.
No problem.
Sheet 1 of 1 for proposed site coverage.
And that's
Wait,
in,
stop. You constantly do this, you speak and then you drop it.
I'm sorry.
So we can't hear you. So what is it called?
It's called proposed site coverage exhibit. I believe it's been submitted, but we have a revision of today that added in the proposed
Just
playground.
clarify, if we have it, we're looking at that, that's all. If we don't have it, so
It's not a prior submission.
With that, this plan was revised today, so this is, you don't have this plan.
and it was,
is a previous version of it here?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the individual itself?
You probably have the December 27th revised vision date. Just to give a further clarification, this is the one that you have. This is December 27th one. It doesn't have the playground colored in. It was an oversight on our part.
and what is the date of that, and let's mark that for the record, please.
What am I up to, read? Fine.
What,
Hang on.
what is the?
I don't know what you're marking.
All right,
Start with-
yeah, let me just start over. Let me just start over.
Bottom corner there, give us the number.
So this A5 is proposed site coverage exhibit dated October 5th, 2022, last revised December 27th, 2022. And this is what's been submitted to the board as part of the application package,
Yeah.
the resubmittal in December.
I don't know.
It's one of one proposed site coverage exhibit.
I don't know those dates. Revised layout 1247. And then what do you add?
All right, so this exhibit, yeah, so this was what's submitted. When we prepared this, we left out what is not included in the coverage on this exhibit was the playground surface. So on the plan which we realized that we left it off, we have now added it to the exhibit with the revision date of today.
And that's A2.
And that's A4.
And you've added that as a result of a comment from the memorandum of Stonefield that mentions that you left that out, so you brought in that exhibit to address.
Yes, it was brought to our attention in the Stonefield letter when we realized the oversight.
Okay, so it's the small, to be clear,
So,
where the word Chadwick Road is, to the left of that, as we get closer to the parking lot in the building, it's one small little box there, and most of that box is what you now marked as correct?
correct, so what we've added in is the play surface, which is 3,400.
Clarify before you do the-
Yes, Because of the site of the campus, we still fall within the 68% coverage that we've been talking about all night, basically.
No problem.
So while I have this exhibit out, I just want to, I guess, clarify some of the conversation that we had earlier with regard to the coverages for the site. So there's a little bit of an apples to oranges kind of comparison going on here, where the phasing of the redevelopment of the hospital campus, right, contemplates the entire campus when we calculate the coverage and the requirements of the H zone, which is the maximum allowed coverage for the H zone is 75%. We're proposing 68%. For this exhibit and for the child care, we've had the assumption that the gravel lot is constructed as proposed in the next application, and we include all of the coverage for that parking area. And part of the reason we're doing it, the parking lot application, is that it's my understanding that the construction of the temporary gravel parking lot was for the purposes as a means to deal with the COVID pandemic. So they had an emergency application to be able to install the parking area.
So you're just saying.
Wendy, take your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to look at the timeline.
No problem.
My
I
fault.
need to write.
So, for the purposes of the testimony this evening, you've included that gravel parking that's existing today
Yes,
in your coverage calculation.
yes.
Okay, so could you now go ahead and explain what's proposed for the child care center that's being built?
Before you do that, I want to say, there's going to be your testimony that including all of that coverage in the parking lot area in the next application, you're still at 68%, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So
I just want that.
I just wanted to point out that that lot coverage is included in the 68%.
Perfect.
On the totality of the property, the 83% or just that one?
Correct.
Yes, we're not just, we're looking at the entire campus when we do the phasing of the plans. I just wanted to clarify that. All right, so again, we are relocating the existing child care services that's currently located in the hospital to this new standalone building. And again, it's designed to fully conform with the new H-zone criteria. And again, it's located in the H2 sub-district. It's going to be a 16,000 square foot building that meets all required bulk setbacks from Chadwick as well as the side yards. The only main entrance that we were saying is to the south. And the playground area is going to be 3,580 square feet. And it's also going to include a small shed, which is 100 square feet and approximately 9.5 feet high. And that's going to be at the northwest corner of the proposed playground area.
And what is the purpose of that shed?
That's just for purposes of the play equipment and you know, amenities for the play area and for the teachers to have storage in the play area.
Is the play area surrounded by any fencing?
Yeah, so you'll see that the entire playground area is enclosed with a 5-foot solid vinyl fence. And it will tie into the proposed fence that will be around the perimeter of the parking area that we're proposing.
And that fence that's proposed around the perimeter of the parking area, could you just tell the board how tall that fence is and the material proposed?
It's going to be a 5-foot vinyl fence. 6 foot. 6 foot vinyl.
6 foot vinyl fence. When you say vinyl fence, is that a board-on-board fence style?
It's a solid board.
Solid,
But
solid.
you can't solid, you can't see through it.
Can't see through. It's
Question.
not a chain link fence.
Question.
That's what I'm asking.
You're saying it's going to connect to the parking lot fence. Is the fence going to come back to the building or is it going to be open to the parking lot?
No, the fence is going to be enclosed, the entire playground will be enclosed on both sides, on all
Will
sides.
there be a door?
Say again?
Will there be a door to be able to exit?
So there'll be a gate
Not back
that,
into the building, I'm talking about on the fence.
on the fence of the playground you're talking about. Yeah, there'll be two man gates, that one that lets you out towards the parking area, and then one that's an emergency exit out to, a sidewalk that will bring you to Chadwick.
I would just thank God forbid if something happened, and they get back to the building. But,
Yeah, there's two gates I think you get out of the playground.
Can I just clarify, is it 5 foot or 6 foot?
6 foot fence, okay? The playground.
It's two,
I'm sorry, to clarify, the playground fence is 5 foot, the perimeter fence for the parking area is 6.
and with regard to any other improvements on the site for the child care center, is there going to be a location for a generator or any other equipment?
Yes, so there's a proposed generator on the southeast corner of the building that's proposed. And the utilities to service the building will be accessed off of Chadwick Road.
And with regard to the entrance, you said the entrance to the facility and exit other than emergency is through the parking lot. Could you just point that out?
Yeah, so you can see the main entrance you'll see the covered entrance. There's also a bike rack at that entrance that we're proposing, and then the walkways that will access to the parking area that's to the south of the building.
And do you have any handicap accessible
Yes, we are
parking in that area?
proposing 3 ADA accessible spaces as well as an EV accessible space. In the prior version of the plan, we were proposing all 4 EV parking spaces to be in the front parking deck, but we decided to locate 3 of them in the front parking deck and propose 1 at the child care building. So we still have a total of 4 EV spaces, but now we're proposing 1 in the area of the child care building.
And do you have any parking proposed drop-off for if someone wanted to just come and drop off their child, park for 5 minutes, walk their child in?
We haven't had any, I think there's 3 dedicated spaces that will be at the south entrance of the building.
And that's for the
For
drop-off.
drop-off.
And with regard to services for that building, you advise that the services for the building come through the rear parking lot, is that correct?
Yeah, so the services of the building, for the child care building will primarily come through the hospital, and then it will be delivered from the hospital to the south entrance, the main entrance of the building. None of the deliveries for the building will come off of Chadwick. Everything will basically run through the operations of the hospital and be carted back to the child care building, including deliveries. So the deliveries would be done with a small pickup truck or like, and same thing with the trash enclosure will also be serviced as through the hospital maintenance facility to bring it to the main dumpster area of the hospital. So
And is there any trash area for this
yes,
building?
the trash area, the loading space are both located on the northwest corner of the parking of the child care building. It's a 12 by 18 loading stall, and then there's an 8 by 12 dumpster in front of that.
And with regard to the child care building itself, are there any other improvements on the site for that child care building?
Yeah, so we're also proposing the improvements of the parking area to the south, which is an increase of parking of 104 spaces.
So you're going to add by restriping and expanding 104 parking spaces to that existing lot area, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And could you just explain to the board and maybe show with your hand how you would drive up there and circulate through that lot?
Yeah, so the part of the improvements of the lot is this project is to vacate a portion of Chadwick Road. So the traffic coming off of Chadwick Road, I could show you the existing conditions just to give you a quick overview.
I think that would be helpful if you show us how it operates now and then show us how it's proposed.
Yes, I'm bringing back up A2, which is the existing conditions plan. So you can kind of see how the circulation of the site kind of works and how it's going to work in the future. So traffic coming off of Cedar Lane can currently drive up Chadwick Road, and not access the hospital lighting, so it came all the way up to Grange Road, and then there's a two-way driveway that comes down Grange Road into the hospital. There's currently a one-way exit driveway for the ambulance area, so currently you get a lot of traffic flow that will come through Chadwick Road, then back up to Grange, and then back into the hospital. The other point of entrance to this back area is off of Vandalinda, and then there's a main driveway off of Teaneck Road. Under proposed conditions, the portion...
But you also didn't say that you come in there and not go up Chadwick and come into the hospital flow.
So they can...
From Cedar Lake, you can come in and go straight to the front.
Yeah, you can come into Cedar Lane, you can come into the front
Right,
portion.
the way you said it's only from Teaneck to the second area.
Oh, yeah, so you can also come to the front main entrance off of Chadwick Road, right? So the point of entrance, this application won't change any of the point entrances off of Teaneck Road. It won't change the movement of coming in Cedar Lane off of Chadwick Road into the front parking area. It isn't changing the access to Vandalinda, but what it is going to do is it's going to eliminate the traffic flow that comes all the way up to Grange Road and then comes back down in here into the driveway that connects Grange Road to the hospital. Because that driveway is now going to be removed, and traffic coming off of Chadwick will no longer be able to get up to that portion of the residential neighborhood. They are going to be, the Chadwick Road that comes in off of Cedar Lane is now going to create a loop road that circulates back through the hospital so that it eliminates that connection to the residential roadways up by Grange Road.
Before you take that down, also read your testimony that if you're closing off that street on the back, from the top, the western side, that it also would increase entranceway until the road. Sorry. You increase the traffic coming in from the Vandalinda side until that loop road was done and that was closed. Somebody would come normally from the western side of the hospital to enter, and no longer can enter there.
They're not no longer going to here, but the primary movement's going to be coming off of Chadwick now for the loop road.
Or they could be coming down Vandalinda and come into Vandalinda.
They could still come into Vandalinda.
Until you're
A further phase of the project,
correct, when you have the loop road in, and that
The whole
is
loop road.
emergency only.
yes.
That's, yeah, in the future phase. So back to A3.
What I was trying to point out, what I think is important to note, is that it's going to increase traffic in that entrance for the period of time after that closes until the loop road is done and that's closed to the public.
Clearly, the traffic that is coming from that direction would still use Vandalinda to come in that same direction. Whether it will increase traffic or not, I don't know, because now you have an entrance that moves in a quicker and more directed manner. So we'll let the traffic expert talk about that, because that would be his opinion.
Yeah, the traffic engineer gives more details on the traffic increases or decreases.
I'm just saying from a logical perspective, anybody coming from the west down is not going to pass an entrance to go around the other side. So. Okay?
So back to A3, you'll see at the bottom of the east side of the page is where the loop road is created. It's a two-way driveway that's 24 feet wide that gives access to the gated parking lots that we're proposing at the westerly side of the building. The ambulance also, which was an exit only, is now going to become an ingress only, and the circulation will be back in through the Ring Road. As you can also see that the Chadwick Road will have a cul-de-sac created at the end of the road. This cul-de-sac was created as part of the approved Phoenix Mayor and Council by Ordinance 22-2022. There is some substandard curb radius of 27.5 feet, where required by RSI is 40 and PNEC is 40, and then the right-of-way radius is 35.5, and the required RSI is 48, and PNEC Township standard is 50 feet. So we require waivers for that. That geometry, though, has been adopted in part of the vacated ordinance by the mayor and council, and we're just utilizing that approved cul-de-sac in that ordinance.
Now, when I look at your plan for that cul-de-sac of Chadwick, I see a dark green area
Yes.
protruding from that cul-de-sac. Could you just explain what that is?
So the dark green area you see here represents an emergency fire access for emergency vehicles. It's 12 foot wide, and then it opens up a little bit to allow for a better turning radii for the fire truck. Should an emergency happen, it needs to access from Chadwick Road. That will be a gated entrance with only that can be accessed through the emergency vehicles, and there will be no common traffic or allowed.
So when we're saying emergency vehicles, this is not an emergency vehicle, meaning a hospital vehicle or an ambulance that has to go every day to the hospital. This is emergency, meaning another road is closed and this is the only way it could access it. Is that correct?
Yes, this is just in case of a fire at maybe the hospital or one of the residents on Chadwick, for the fire truck to be able to traverse from the hospital to this, in an emergency situation, not for the ambulances on everyday situation. That will be all utilized with the new geometry of the ring road and the ambulance entrance.
Will that have a Knox box?
Yes, whatever the
Yeah,
fire department requires.
whatever the fire and police would like or require for that gated entrance, we will provide that.
And just for the record, if I could take a second, the plans were referred to the fire department and the police department by your planning board secretary. On 9/23/22, I'm just trying to see if I could read the name. It's Lieutenant, and I have to be honest, I cannot read the name. Yeah, batch 258 said they had no objections, and there was also a referral report issued by another lieutenant from the fire department, and it says, comment, and this is October 24th, 2022. The fire department will require the Chadwick Road cul-de-sac to have a gate to provide fire apparatus access from Chadwick Road to the private road from Cedar Lane. The portion of the existing Chadwick Road that will become an entrance to the hospital. The gate in the area of the property line between lots 8 and 9 on Chadwick Road shall allow access to the driveway into the front and rear of the hospital. The gate shall be large enough to accommodate a 50-foot ladder truck. The applicant shall provide a traffic engineer's report to verify the access, including a turning radius drawing. All proposed landscaping shall be considered in the drawing. The fire department shall provide the specs of the ladder truck. And
Wendy, whatever we potentially, if this gets approved, you agree to all that, correct?
yes. Do you need those reports marked? But I believe it's part of your board's file already since it was directed to them.
It's part of the board's
Fine.
internal information, but
Yes.
you stipulated you'll comply with any recommendation from police or fire.
Correct. Correct. And we did consult with them in the design of that.
Okay, so also as part of the loop road improvements, we are proposing a new valet structure. It's at the, I guess it's just east of the entrance to the emergency vehicle.
Could you hold your mic up a little bit? I'm sorry, I know it's a lot of balancing.
So we're proposing a new valet structure. It's 8 feet by 24 feet valet structure, and it's at the northwest corner of the existing hospital building. You're also proposing a drop-off lane there, which allows for 3 to 5 car park stacking. And this is basically to improve the valet function that currently exists. We're also proposing to relocate handicap spaces that are in the existing parking field, to relocate those along the curb that runs along the western side of the hospital.
So you're relocating the handicap parking closer to the hospital building?
Yes, we're taking the parking spaces that are existing in the parking field and taking them from one side of the driveway basically and putting them up against the hospital.
Are there any drainage improvements proposed for that area of the campus?
Yeah, so the site improvements, we're going to incorporate a whole new drainage system in this area.
Could you raise your mic again?
So the drainage improvements that we're proposing are going to consist of 2 infiltration systems as well as a fair amount of permeable paving in the parking lot.
Do you have a plan that
So we
shows
kind
that?
of I do have a grading plan.
Is that something we have in our plans?
Yes.
Please identify the page. We cannot see that. What page?
Could you just identify the page for the record and the date?
Yeah, so this is, what's the marking? What's that? This is A6.
No, on the bottom, what page of 11?
Yeah, it's sheet 8 of 11. It's soil erosion sediment control plan.
Hang on a second.
The date is September 9th, 2022, last revised December 27th, 2022.
8 of 11, you said? Okay.
Let me correct that. I'm looking at sheet 7. It's a more blow-up picture of the state.
Really, we have to do that.
What number are we marking this? A7 for the record? A7 for the record, and could you read it for the record? The identification box, the sheet for this plan?
All right, this is A7, it's the drain and utility plan. Again, it's dated September 9th, 2022, and it's last revised December 27th, 2022. And this is the copy of
Mr. Chair, can we have the witness just re-clarify what is A6 and what is A7?
Yes, we will be happy to do so.
A6 is,
Starting out 7-11, is that correct?
you're up to 7. Yeah, the grading and drainage plan is page 7 of 11. A7.
And what was A6 for the record?
A6 was the erosion control plan.
Soil erosion and sediment control.
And both of these have the revision date of 12/27/22.
Yes.
We need both, or you're using this one?
I'm going to show you this one. It shows more clearly the drainage system. So,
Let's identify when he says, let's use this one. What is it?
Page
we're using A7.
Page 7 of 11, what are you marking it?
A7.
A7. You're up.
So then, from here, we could see just lines, so if you could kind of take your pen or something and just outline the area you're showing and where the parking lot is and where the proposed building is? Because it's difficult to see from this distance on that plan.
Okay, so the parking lot is in the middle of the page, more or less. You'll see that there's a hatching, a cross hatching there that represents areas that are going to be porous paving. The porous paving is the green infrastructure technique that's preferred by the NJDEP for stormwater management and water quality control. And what it does is allows the water to more or less run off into the porous paving and infiltrate into stone and into the ground. It effectively reduces the impact of impervious coverage. So we have a fair amount of areas of the parking field that are going to be porous paving to mitigate the impervious coverage that is the parking lot.
And Dan, as according to the ordinance 22-2022, you are required to, as much as practical, to conform with those New Jersey DEP stormwater management regulations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you designed this plan in accordance therewith?
Yes.
Could
Wait,
you
also one other thing was addressed with the neighbor's water issue and how.
Yes, we'll do that. Let's explain the design first, and then we'll say what it'll cover.
So the way that the drainage system is going to work is the site currently has the hospital campus has a series of stormwater management pipes, inlets that are existing today that we are going to connect into that take the water from the hospital, run off from the back of the hospital and brings it more or less to the front of the hospital and ties into the drainage system that's in Teaneck Road. There's a main drainage line that runs along the northerly lot line down Chadwick, and then there's another line that runs actually through the building and then out towards Teaneck Road. The majority of our lot goes to the lot, the pipe that goes through the south end of the lot. Very little bit that comes down the Chadwick Road. But there's two main lines that drain the stormwater from this back area of the lot. What we're proposing here is the permeable paving as one way to mitigate the stormwater runoff. Another technique that we're using is a large infiltration detention system that's going to be underneath the parking lot as well. And that's sized to retain and detain the water of all the runoff from the parking lot area as well as the building. There's a second system that we're also proposing that's on the westerly side of the child care building that will do the same thing. We'll infiltrate some of the water, detain it and retain it so that the reduction of the stormwater runoff from this project area is going to be reduced by 50% for the 2-year storm, 25% for the 10-year storm, and 20% for the 100-year storm. Those are the requirements that we need to meet for DEP. We're also proposing 2 green infrastructure stormwater quality treatment units that are going to treat some of the water that comes off of the ring road that we're proposing to improve water quality of the runoff from the site. There was some concern about the impact of the residential properties to the south of the parking lot, really the southwest of the parking lot, south of Normal Court.
One second.
Did you just describe something as calling it a green road?
Excuse me?
In part of your description, I guess. I'm sorry. In part of your description, did you address something calling it a green road?
No, a green infrastructure.
A green infrastructure? And can you just kind of go over that again for me, please?
So green infrastructure is different kinds of stormwater management techniques that are encouraged by the state, New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. They include such things as the forest paving. There are certain water qualities that are designed in a way to meet a certain criteria that they categorize as green infrastructure. The way they work is that they'll take the stormwater and try to clean it, filter it, and reduce runoff in a more natural way than traditional filters and detention systems were in the past. So for instance, the 2 filters that we're proposing that are green infrastructure are more or less, they act like a bioretention where they actually have plants growing in them. So when the stormwater enters the water quality treatment unit, it basically waters the plants that are growing in it, filters the water through it, and then there's a pipe at the bottom that lets go the cleaner water. So when you have a higher storm, it can overflow, but what it does is it tries to utilize the storm water to more or less like water plants and more natural measures than having just a filter that you traditionally would have had 10 years ago.
Before you go into the issues with the neighbors, is this a major development from DEP perspective requiring all this?
Yes, it is. Just like the final thing on this, before I talk about some of the, there were some comments in the Stonefield report relating to drainage calculations, and they're technical in nature. We'll be happy to address those, and if we need to make a system larger, we'll do that in order to address those comments fully. So I just want to put on the record that we will satisfy those comments in the letter.
And in order to design this system, did you have any site investigation done or any testing done?
You know, there were 5 soil tests done in the area of the proposed infiltration systems and forest paving, and we redesigned the system to facilitate the results of those tests.
Are those what you would commonly call perk tests?
Yeah, there's perk tests to see the quality of the soil, the depth of groundwater. So we have adjusted the design to meet the needs, the soil conditions that exist now. To do that, we actually made these systems slightly larger to accommodate that.
And you believe the system will be able to accommodate the runoff?
Yes, it will.
And with regard to this design, we know we're taking out the driveway that goes out to Greens Road now, and that is a paved driveway, is that correct?
Yes, the driveway that is, goes out to Greens Road is located to the west of the parking lot and is currently paved, which is going to be now landscaped.
And that it's a curved paved driveway?
Yes, correct.
And so right now, does water run off that driveway into Grange Road?
No, actually, most of the driveway comes down into our site. Maybe a small portion at the very top goes into Grange Road, but most of it actually drains towards our site. And we're going to obviously remove that driveway and eliminate any runoff to Grange Road.
And that will be replaced with landscaping?
Yes.
And lawn, I would assume? Both?
Yeah, so that whole area that is where the Grange driveway is in the H1 zone, and we're proposing to basically re-landscape that. There's not going to be no parking lot improvements in there. What our application will also do is some of the water that currently is lawn area where our parking lot is that drains towards Normal Court, we're actually going to intercept that and put it into our new drainage system. So it's going to be a reduction of runoff that runs through Lot 7 or Normal Court area.
So as a result of this, do you see any increase in runoff from the site onto Norma Court or Grange Road as a result of this construction?
No, there'll be a reduction to both Grange Road and Norma Court as a result of this project. As well as off the site to Teaneck Road, there will also be a reduction because of the proposed drainage systems that we're proposing.
With regard to did you have anything further to add with regard to the drainage system? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I think that's pretty much summarizes it.
With regard to the proposed parking lot, do you propose any lighting any additional lighting or new lighting in that area?
Yes, we're proposing new light fixtures for the parking areas. We're also going to
So before right now, the driveway out to Grange Road, does that have light fixtures on it?
Yeah, just before we get into lighting, Mr. Clark, did you have any questions with regard to drainage that you wanted to address at this point? Or maybe I'm asking the wrong, some feel professional. I apologize.
A little louder. I'll let Greg just work.
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of John Strong and Stonefield, Alton Savage, civil engineer. If you have a couple questions or additional testimony to request, We spoke to the, we'll call them points of interest or locations where the stormwater is going at the property line. I believe there is the lot 7 portion. Can you speak to how that drainage area is meeting DEP requirements?
Well, the lot 7 portion, we included that basically to demonstrate how much water was getting reduced toward that area. That, the area that actually runs off through lot 7 then comes back into the hospital property and goes into our drainage system that goes to the line that runs along the south. I can kind of show you broadly where that is. So just I'm going back to A2. So the existing condition, the water that runs through normal court goes through the yards of the residential neighborhood to lot 7. And then from lot 7 comes down through a pipe and comes back into our system. So what we wanted to demonstrate, although we recognize that it's part of our drainage system that runs down towards Teaneck Road, we wanted to demonstrate that the impact, there will be no negative impact on the lot 7. As the water flows through the normal court, we wanted to make sure that when quantified, that water gets reduced going there. And that, we just wanted to show that there was no impact on lot 7. Because that area still drains down to the same line that we're tying into, we consider it part of the overall drainage area for our project. That was just like a separate analysis I wanted to do to show that there's no impact on lot 7.
Wendy, does this address what we previously talked about, some kind of a welling of water or something there that was an issue?
We heard some residents before talk about possibly having some water, and we wanted to make sure that anything we did would reduce, not increase water, and that's what he's testifying to today.
Thank you. Any else?
No, I think just for the board's reference, so we will work with the applicant, but in accordance with the ordinance and the state requirements, the analysis for stormwater is taken at the boundary of the property line and boundary of the disturbance where the water is going. So the lot 7 calculations have been provided. We'll work with them related to what method is being used, and then separately as we speak to system 1 and 2, they will be analyzed separately going forward just to make sure that it's in accordance with the ordinance.
And we understand we have to comply with the ordinance and your requirements, and DEP requirements as well. Perfect.
As long as you stipulate so, we're good.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then I don't...
You guys, by the way, if you don't wait for us to ask you, if you have something like, we'll look at it.
Will do. And then I'm not sure if it relates to the neighboring comment or not, but we did submit a mounding analysis. So we'd like to do groundwater mounding just to elaborate a little bit more on the systems, the implications of drainage infrastructure systems, and the impact to the basement of the child care facility.
So we did.
Maybe you could just repeat the question so that everyone can hear.
As part of the soil analysis and the drainage analysis, we have to do a mounding analysis to demonstrate that the infiltration systems that we're proposing will function properly. In other words, the mounding analysis estimates, the impact of the groundwater that was measured in the soil tests. So the question was, the mounding analysis that we showed that the infiltration systems, the depth that we're proposing will function properly without impacting on the depth of groundwater. So one of the questions they had was on the second system, which is next to the child care system, the smaller of the two systems. The mound analysis showed that the bottom of the system would not impact the mound analysis. However, the basement of the child care was at the level of where the existing groundwater is, so that the question was because of the close proximity of the building to the drainage system, there could be impacting the groundwater. What we're proposing to do is to fully waterproof the foundation of the building, provide sump pumps for the building to make sure that any impact on groundwater would be mitigated with that.
Thank you.
Wendy, how much more testimony do you have?
Not that much, I don't believe. Just a few more, but there might be more questions.
I want you to time for a break, so let's finish.
I think that covers it.
You guys, that's all right, let's finish this testimony, we'll take a break.
So we were just beginning lighting, if that's okay, and with regard to lighting, I was asking the question, is there lighting today on the driveway that goes out to Grange Road?
Yeah, there are 5 lights that are existing along Grange Road.
On the driveway?
On the driveway, I'm sorry, the Grange driveway, out to Grange Road. There are 5 existing lights that light up the driveway. 2 of those are going to be removed. The lights that fall within the area of the H1 zone or the landscape green area here, all those lights are going to be removed. We are proposing to relocate 3 of those lights for the purpose of installing them along the ring road. Currently, they have a light program where they have the decorative fixtures that they're hydro fixtures that they currently use in and around the immediate area of the hospital. So they'd like to continue that lighting program along the back of the hospital through the ring road. So they're going to relocate 3 of the lights that are along the ring road and install them along where the ring road is. There are also 5 of them that exist in the area of the ambulance drop-off that are also going to remain. We are proposing 9 new LED fixtures that comply with the dark sky requirements for the main parking lot area that we're proposing. We will require a couple waivers from the PNEC ordinance for the average illumination, where the PNEC has a requirement that a maximum average of 0.5 and a 1 foot candle max at any point requirement, which is really not a realistic standard for current lighting standards. It's substandard to what we provide, and it's contrary to the IES light level recommendations. So we're asking for waivers for that to light this, for safety and for purposes of current design standards. So what we're proposing here is a 1 foot candle average where they only allow a half, so we need a waiver for that. We are also going to comply with the dark sky requirements for all the proposed light LED fixtures that we're adding, but for the lights that we will be relocating and the lights that were located on Grange Road that we're going to relocate in and around the Brook Road, we're requesting a waiver for the dark sky requirements on that. And again, it's really for the purpose of maintaining the lighting program that currently exists in and around the hospital. So we'd like to have that waiver.
For your testimony, the light will not affect those back areas and the houses and the neighbors?
Yeah, so that was actually my next statement, would be that the area where we're going to be relocating those existing light fixtures is in the area, again, in and around the hospital where it's remote from any impact on the neighbors.
And the stuff in the parking lot closest to their properties?
Yes, and the other thing I would add, the lights that we're proposing in the main parking area are going to be dimmable. The new lights that are proposing now have a lot of functions. They have better light control, and they have dimmable features where that if a light seems to be brighter or not as bright as you can actually adjust the light intensities.
And we were suggesting, Mr. Chair, that there be, if the board chooses to approve it, that there be a condition in the resolution that after a certain amount of time that they're in operation, there will be a review by your professionals to see if they should be dimmed any more or any less. We would have no problem with that.
Dan, is that okay with you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we've done that before. Once again, it would be up to Stoneville to go.
Yeah, we spoke with Stonefield prior to today's meeting, and we made that recommendation that we'd be willing to comply with a 6-month probational review of the lights, if required to do so.
Okay, so you stipulate that they're adjustable, and after 6 months, we'll have to take a review, and you'll comply with the recommendations of the engineer.
Yes.
And just to clarify, to be clear, the new lights are adjustable. The lights that are being located, I think it's the 3 fixtures, if I'm not mistaken. I might have the number wrong. Then it's 3 fixtures are being relocated.
Yeah, we're relocating 6 fixtures.
So
we're relocating 6 existing lights. Cool.
And are those dimmable as well or not?
Well, those are the existing Hadco lights that are, that we want to relocate in the area. I don't believe those are dimmable.
I just
But
wanted to
the
make
parking
sure.
lot lights.
But those are close to the building, that's not
Close to
an
the
issue.
building.
as you
Yeah,
said.
yeah, those are really just for the inner area around the hospital.
And they're away from the residents, and those are the same,
Got it, really good. Go ahead.
Could you speak to the building mounted lights or any lights related?
The architect can talk more.
the
about
architect will be able to speak about the building mountain. There are lights under the eave, like when you walk in the door and the porch of the building, and he'll be able to speak about those.
Is he going to speak to the overall lighting plan in Village that's impacted by that? Because that's usually engineered.
There is no spillage from it, so it'll be easy for him to speak about it.
The child care building will have no lights that will be for the purposes of lighting the parking lot or like.
It's
The
just
only
for the
lights we'll have
doorways.
is the under canopy lights for the
Just
purpose
the
of lighting.
doorway.
There'll be no spillage or lighting in and around the child care building.
I mean, it might be still a question, but I'm assuming that that's not a building usable in the evening, correct? Is that a daytime use only?
It's daytime use only, but you know, in the winter months, when they bring the children in the morning, it could be.
Right, and it could be a little dark when you're-
Yes.
but it's
yeah.
not-
No, it's not.
not
used
that
up.
late.
It's not used that late.
So I'm assuming that you'd have it set up where the lights would dim at night.
Yep, exactly.
I guess the problem I wanted to talk about.
Excuse me, I think
Dan?
Mr. Melvin.
Yeah, so just to be clear,
Thank you, Michael.
just to be clear, after 6 months, the engineers will go back and do an on-site survey to clarify that the lighting into the lighting is.
Yeah, and I'll back up on that. After 6 months, they'll do a survey, you guys together with them, and if they have a problem with it, then it's just gonna come back to the board.
Or they could agree.
No, I'm
to-
saying if you guys can't resolve it,
Correct, we
then come
understood
back.
that. We understood that.
Right. There's nothing gets understood on the record.
Yeah, no, I
That's what they want.
just want to make sure also that we work something out.
It's absolutely underneath, there it is.
Escrow, something that's put aside, because, what we talk about now and what we talk about 6 months from now.
We
We'll work
appreciate you clarifying it for the
Just want to
record.
make sure.
And any proposed lighting on the building itself, we understand that is looking to comply, but we will be looking to review the illumination levels to make sure the property line is.
Yes. Yes. With regard to
One sec,
the,
one sec.
Just to confirm, the wall-mounted lighting, that's also dark sky compliant? Yeah, the lighting on the building.
it's no wall-mounted lighting,
Yeah, there's
it's
no wall
only
mounted.
entrance door lighting, under the canopy soffits. It's not wall-mounted. It's downlit.
So is it just decorative type of stuff, or is it?
Yeah,
It's-
the architect can talk more
The
about it.
architect will talk about it, but it's lighting to light you go into the entrance doors or exit the doors.
But if I remember you talking, there's a walkway like around most of the building. That's a lit walkway, I'm assuming.
No.
Not?
Clearly, as you know, it's open during the daytime hours. We don't expect children in the child care center in other hours, so it's not a lit walkway. There's lights on the driveway, but the walkway itself is.
So on the four sides of the building, it's only be lighting on the one side on the driveway?
So the walkways around the building, there'll be lights along the ring road that'll light up the walkway
Right.
along
Right.
the east side of the building. And along the south, we also have parking lot lights that will light up
So
that
just
walkway.
the northern and western side?
The only lights that, the walkways that aren't are the emergency egress out to the driveway.
It's not.
The down.
I will have the architect address it so we'll make sure it's on the record and it's clear.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. So the walkway going up to Chadwick will not be lit?
No, there's no proposed lighting in the walkway.
Okay, but if there should be something there, because if there's a problem with daylight savings time or going back and forth, I mean, even if it's ground lit lighting, you still light the walkway? No?
So, why don't we review that when we take a break?
No
I know
problem.
you're going to take a break soon, and we can determine if we should add one.
Right.
And thank you for the recommendation. Did you want to take a break now, or you want to finish? testimony.
The other thing the thing I want to touch on,
Before you go, Sebastian, your part.
The only reason I asked about the dark sky compliance is because building lighting is also required to be dark sky compliant, and so I just wanted to determine for the purposes of the waiver, if that was necessary.
We'll have the architect address it.
Okay, yeah.
And I think there's another question.
She was comfortable with your, let's finish up this one.
so we are also we're proposing a 6-foot solid fence around the perimeter of the project area. That fence will have 2 gates that will be locked. One at the normal court side, and then one at the access behind the church. The fence right now is proposed to be a 6-foot wood board-on-board fence, but we're looking at making it a 6-foot white solid vinyl fence to match the existing fence that's.
So it's not proposed to be wood fence, we're now changing it to make it a vinyl fence since you have vinyl fence in the area already.
Right, so currently on the plan it's called out as a 6-foot solid board-on-board wood fence, but we'd like to change it to be more uniform with the existing fencing that's already helping buffer the neighbors on the west side to make it a 6-foot solid vinyl fence and match that fence, which is probably a white fence. The other thing that we were looking to do.
But that's 6 foot from the current through the end of the parking lot, and then it drops to 5 foot by the.
The only 5 foot is what encloses the playground. Yeah.
Could you just point out on the plan the 6-foot fence where you're talking about where it begins and where it ends?
So the 6-foot fence is going to start at the corner of what is the 5-foot fence for the playground area, and then encompass the whole parking lot area and tie back into an existing fence that's at the southwest side of the site that's already screened the parking lot to the south. So we'd like to match that 6-foot white vinyl fence and carry it all around and tie into the, again, we're tying into the fence at the playground.
And is a 5-foot fence around the playground area the same fence, just shorter?
Is it the same type of fence?
Well,
Yes.
it would be. Yeah, right now they're different, but they will be.
Yes. So your answer was the 5-foot fence is the same type of material as the 6-foot fence, it's just the difference is foot.
Yeah, it would just be one 5-foot and one 6. The other thing, I'm bringing back up A2, the other thing that I wanted to just go over real quick is there's been some discussions. There's the boiler room building, that is a 1-story building on the Van der Linden side of the campus. Currently, there's a screen fence that's along the westerly property line. What we'd like to do, it's not shown on the plans yet, but in some discussions that we've had, to help screen the operations of this building is to extend that solid 6-foot solid vinyl fence that we're proposing on the perimeter, extend it down to help screen the operations in and around that building. We will need some relief from the requirements because that fence is going to be a 6-foot fence in the front yard, and it's also going to be a solid fence. It's not going to be an open fence. So we're requesting relief to construct that fence. Again, it's in response to help to buffer and visibly provide a visible screening of that area behind what is that.
Oh, that's a good point that you brought up. Let's talk about that. So you're creating visible screening of what basically is a junkyard, right? You threw a bunch of garbage by that building. So the idea of doing everything you're doing now and the storage that you talked about stuff is to clean that up and get out of there. So are you proposing a fence to hide that, or are you getting rid of it?
Well, we're going to clean that up, but also going to just help screen any operations in that area.
Well, is it both?
Yes.
Both.
One more thing, if I could I take you back to the previous plan, if I may? I'm sorry, I lost my count here. A3. With regard to the sidewalk on Chadwick Road in yellow, the Chadwick Road, there's a sidewalk around Chadwick Road. Is that connect to the balance of the hospital campus?
There's no connection to the hospital sidewalk. That wasn't a fire plan, and we removed it.
So that sidewalk is just as required by the ordinance to have a sidewalk around any street, is that
Yes.
correct? And then the walkway that you have from the proposed child care center along the driveway, the lower driveway aisle, yeah, and that's required by the ordinance, is that as well?
Yes, that's the sidewalk that's adjacent to the ring road.
And the ordinance requires that you have those sidewalks adjacent to the road, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's why it's shown there. I have no further questions at this time.
All right, 10:07, we'll break to try to 10:15, 10:25. Okay?
Thank you.
Outside. Our recording back on? Okay. Mr. Simon, floor is yours.
Before Mr. Simon starts, I just want to clarify one thing,
If I allow you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
If you got a microphone, you talk to the microphone, I'll...
Yes?
Okay.
With regard to your last bit of testimony with regard to adding a fence. I'm gonna, A2. On A2, there's been some discussions from some residents that asked you if you could possibly add a fence, am I correct?
Yes.
And that is not part of the application that was submitted, correct?
Correct.
And the fence I'm referring to is the fence around the one-story building right here on the corner on Vandelinda opposite, is that Alvin? Allen? I'm sorry, I can't read it. Alvin. And that fence, if the board would want us to put it in, you would be putting the same type of 6-foot-high board-on-board fence, is that correct?
Yes.
And
Well,
that,
Didn't you say you thought it would be vinyl?
yes, it's vinyl, but it looks like all the board, it looks, it's a solid.
Solid.
Match the fence that's there. But that fence, if the board would want us and the residents would want us to put it in, that would require a variance, to be clear.
Yes.
And the variance is because it's in the front yard setback.
The height of the fence and the front yard setback, and it's not 50% open.
Okay. So if the board chooses, we would be happy to put that in, is that correct?
Correct.
How long is that fence on the street?
What would be the dimensions?
How long the fence? It's approximately 80 feet long.
Could you show us on the plan where that would start?
It would start at the existing fence and come across to the front of the one-story building.
And that's 80 feet long?
Approximately.
Is that to the street? Does that go to the corner of the property, to the street entrance, or is it end before the street?
Well, we'll prepare an exhibit and we'll bring it to the next hearing to show it. I think that would clarify it.
And just update the zoning data table to reflect that.
Yes.
Yes.
Deviation.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Simon.
I'm sorry, Mr. Simon, it's your floor.
The rest of your
So, let's see what we got here. Dan, good evening. Let me start out with some, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. Let me just start with some clarification questions. So, I'm looking at A2, and I am seeing on the eastern side of the exhibit, a bunch of, a couple of single-family homes, a church, on the, I guess it's the eastern side of the former Chadwick Road. You see those I'm referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is labeled on A2, existing conditions plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do those structures currently exist?
No.
So they were, is it fair to say that they were erroneously included in the existing conditions plan?
Well, we were just representing the existing conditions prior to the gravel lot.
Prior to what?
Prior to the existing gravel lot in that area.
But the gravel lot is, that's not included in this application, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, but just so the record is clear, on A2, the structures that are on, like I said, the other side of Chadwick Road, Lot 2, Lot 4, Lot 5, those structures presently do not exist, correct?
Correct.
And the gravel or the impervious coverage that currently covers those lots, as well as Lot 6, is it your testimony that all of that is included in your impervious coverage calculation as it currently exists?
With the proposed coverage exhibit shows what represents what is the current coverage. That exhibits A4.
Put that up a second.
This shows the proposed impervious coverage.
When you say the proposed impervious coverage, I see impervious coverage on Lot 2, on Lot 3, and on Lot 6, as well as other lots that are not labeled. That's all existing gravel, correct?
Yes, this exhibit represents the coverage that exists in those lots.
Today, as well as the coverage that exists for the balance of the hospital campus, correct?
Well, the proposed condition.
The proposed condition. And it also includes the impervious surface for the playground area now, correct?
Yes.
And that still is, because it was 68% before, it's still 68%?
Yes, because there's, the impervious play surface is 3,480 square feet of area. That really didn't affect the rounding of the percentage.
So, is there any additional impervious coverage that is being proposed other than what we're seeing here on A4?
Yeah, so this represents all the proposed and what's going to exist after the phase 1 development.
It does include the phase 2?
This actually includes the gravel lot. I don't know if you call the gravel lot phase 2.
It's the other application, it's the other companion application, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to the relief that the applicant is seeking, my recollection is that I heard you need relief from the design standards and RSIS regarding the cul-de-sac radius, correct?
Yes.
Right? And you need some lighting waivers as well?
Yes.
Right? And with regard to, do you need any other relief?
Well, the only relief that the only other relief is what we just discussed, the fence that.
So you're talking about the fence on the intersection of Albin and Van Linden, correct?
Yes, we'll prepare an exhibit that will reflect whatever relief is required.
Right. And you prepared these plans that have been submitted to the board that you've been referring to throughout the course of your presentation today, correct?
Correct.
And as part of your preparation of these plans, you put together the zoning table on, I guess, sheet maybe 2 of 11, correct?
Yes.
Right. And in doing that, you reviewed the ordinance that's applicable to this application, correct?
Yes.
And in that, let me ask you, with regard to Lot 7 and Lot 8 that are on the other side of Chadwick Road, those two properties are going to continue to be residential, correct? Residential structures on them?
Yes.
Right. And those two properties no longer have access to Chadwick Road as a public right-of-way, correct?
Correct. They'll be accessed from the ring road, the loop road.
From the loop road, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the loop road that they're going to have access to, it's a private driveway in essence at this point, correct?
Correct.
Right? So don't those two houses, don't they need to obtain a planning variance from this board because they don't abut a public road by virtue of your application?
I'd have to defer to the attorneys on that.
Okay, but when you put together your zoning table, you did not take that into consideration, correct? No. And with regard to let's go to, do you have a larger version of sheet 2 of 11? Great. So, I'm referring, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you want me to mark this, because it's the sheet 2 of 11 enlarged. That's up to the board.
2 of 11, then it's already marked.
Okay. So referring to an enlarged version of sheet 2 of 11, you show in H1 various setbacks, correct? Right? You show a 60-foot side setback that encompasses lot 8, 9, and 11, correct? Okay? You show a 60-foot setback to Grange Road that is in the area of the former driveway, correct? And you show a 60-foot setback, side yard setback adjacent to the church on lot 1, correct?
Yes.
Let's start with the side yard setback adjacent to lot 7. So, as a result of this application, the applicant is proposing to consolidate approximately 10 lots into one, correct? Approximately. Right? Can you stick it to the mic, please?
Approximately, I don't have exactly.
And as a result of that, the entire lot 4.01 is going to exceed 25 acres as required by the ordinance, correct?
Yes.
And lot 4.01 is going to encompass numerous principal uses, buildings, and structures, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to the buildings that are on lots 8, 9, and 11, adjacent to lot 7, as a result of your lot consolidation, those 3 dwellings are currently located all entirely within the required 60-foot setback that was promulgated by ordinance 22-2022, correct? As per your zoning table.
Well, after the lot consolidation,
What's that? Wendy, can you please not talk to him? What?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Well, I'll go through it slowly. So, side yard. H1 required 60 feet, right? And combined 120 feet. So you agree that the side yard setback is 60 feet, correct? Right? And so lots 8, 9, and 11, the structures that are currently located in those lots, next to lot 7, are entirely located within that 60-foot setback, correct? And are you aware of whether, as part of your chart on sheet 2 of 11, is there any variance relief that is being requested in connection with those encroachments? You're not.
The zoning table is not really there.
Okay. In your review of the ordinance, do you believe a variance is necessary? Not look at me. It's yes or no? Or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. And with regard to the right side setback in H1, there is a 1.5-story dwelling adjacent to the Lot 1 church structure that similarly is encroaching within the 60-foot setback, correct? Okay. Correct. Does your chart, zoning chart, identify that encroachment as requiring setback relief?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. And with regard to the 2-story dwelling in the front adjacent to Grange Road, that appears to be next to lots 8 and 9. I don't see a lot number for that. That appears to encroach into the front yard setback on Grange Road, does it not?
Yes.
Okay. Has there been any variance relief requested in connection with that encroachment?
We have not noticed.
And with regard to the 1.5-story dwelling that I just identified that encroaches halfway through next to Lot 1, that structure appears to encroach over the H1 line into line in the corner, correct?
Slightly.
So, if I ask you how far is that 1.5-story dwelling in H1 from H2, the answer is 0 because it actually approaches over a little bit, correct?
Excuse me. I just want to get an understanding. If you think that you need to notice because of the house deed, et cetera, then we'll do it. It's a simple thing. I don't really understand the point you're trying to make here. If there's a lack of notice, then they'll make notice on it. If we have to give variances, we'll give it.
Right, so the point being is I'm cross-examining the witness to ascertain whether variances that we believe should have been called out were not called out. That's what I'm trying to get to.
So the point I'm trying to make to you is, just determine that they're not, and they'll notice in the next meeting, and then they will be. They'll add it to their list. I mean, we're not going to spend an hour going through all this to do that. If you think that's an issue, then you brought it up as an issue, let's move on.
I think all of these are issues, absolutely. With regard to...
Excuse me, Wendy, do you have any comment back to that?
All I was going to say is the chart notes all the variants that this expert believes were required for this application. And
Can you just, tell me in English from this expert, who you talking about? Okay, go ahead.
as well as the reports from your zoning officer and experts note all the variances as may be required. If it determines there are existing other variances that are required, are notice provided that any and all other variances and may be determined by the board and as expert as being required as part of the application. We request same, but as of everyone's review so far, no one has determined that they
Okay,
are required.
right now you're encouraging pointing it out to you, so you're willing to know this. That's what you say.
Well,
If it's determined that it's appropriate.
if it's required, we request that.
Well, he's saying it's required, and he's asking the question of your witness.
Say it's required, or tell me that it's not. It's one way or another.
And my expert said that he, based upon his review so far, has not determined it was required.
He's not determined, or it's not required. There's a big difference.
Yeah, he sounded more like I don't know, so.
And if he
you
doesn't
wanna
know,
take
it's
two
fine.
minutes to talk?
If he hasn't considered it, that's
He
valid.
hasn't considered it,
But it's
so.
not up to our experts to flag your variance, which I think is the point Mr. Simon's trying to make.
It would also be considered probably an existing non-conformity.
Well, regardless, it's not in the zoning table, I think is the point council is making, so.
I agree,
It's
the
clarity.
point that council is making, it's not on the zoning table. He had not considered it. If you'd like the zoning table revised, to note that, the expert could do that for the next hearing.
Mr. Simon, would that be satisfactory?
It's their application, I'm just trying to point stuff out, that's all.
No, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this talked about and resolved. So you brought up an issue, let's talk about resolving it.
I would love it if the applicant amended.
Give him a hard time.
I'm not trying to pick on anybody, I'm just doing my job, and I'm trying to identify.
Your job is, I ask you a question, give me a straight answer.
The straight answer is, I would love it for them to amend their application to identify all the variance and exception and waiver relief that they actually need. Would love it.
Okay,
I'll
so
move
if
on.
they did stuff, it's not because they tried not to do it. They might have made a mistake or missed
Yeah, I'm
something.
not-
So if you want to point it out, they'll take notes and we'll fix it to the next time.
Yep, I got it. Okay. With regard to, Dan, you just made a comment that, it may be a pre-existing non-conforming use. What does that mean?
Well, they're not proposing those structures, they exist today.
Right. And so you're saying, so have you done any investigation whatsoever to ascertain whether the setbacks that were formerly there prior to an amendment of the ordinance rendered them pre-existing non-conforming uses?
I'm going to object to the question because it doesn't make sense. The setbacks were already there. So if you're asking if they were there, he already said they were there.
No. To establish a legally valid, Ms. Berger, pre-existing non-conforming use, the witness needs to establish, or the applicant needs to establish, that the use or structure existed at a time when it was permitted under the ordinance. Dan, have you done any investigation to determine one way or another whether those structures that I pointed out are legally existing in terms of their location?
I have not analyzed the zoning of those structures.
And with regard to, let's go to the cul-de-sac bulb for a second. If you can put up an exhibit on that. Wait. Excuse me. Can I take a second? Please ask Ms. Berger not to talk to the witness while I'm cross-examining this. Please.
Right now, it's a cross-examination, and you really shouldn't be speaking to your witness during cross-examination.
Wendy, is that?
With regard to the cul-de-sac bulb, right, for which you require RSIS de minimis exception relief, as well as a waiver under the design standards in the ordinance. You acknowledge that, correct?
Correct.
And and I think you may have either misspoke or I made a mistake and did not hear you correctly. With regard to the vacating of Chadwick Road, the actual bulb that you're proposing includes an area on the hospital property that is being used as part of that bulb, correct?
Well, yes.
Right? So it's
part of vacation.
Well, to have a vacation, it's a municipal road, and the municipality determines that they no longer need the road, and therefore it is vacated. That's a vacation, correct?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, but in addition to the vacation of the bottom part of Chadwick Road, as part of the cul-de-sac design, the hospital has dedicated a portion of their property, their real property, to that cul-de-sac bulb,
Portions
correct?
of lots 2 and 3
Correct.
contributing to that, correct?
Right. So, is there any reason, since you are proposing new construction, especially because you're proposing new construction here, why you could not increase the size of that cul-de-sac bulb by dedicating additional hospital lands to make the cul-de-sac bulb fully conforming with the residential site improvement standards and with the design standards set forth in the ordinance?
We utilize the cul-de-sac approved under the main council ordinance that's created.
I didn't ask you that question, sir. I asked you, is there anything that prevents you from utilizing additional hospital lands so to fully conform with the RSIS and design standards set forth in the ordinance for cul-de-sac bulb size radius?
I object to the question. The witness has answered the question already. I understand Mr. Simon might not like the answer, but the question is just asked and answered.
He did answer, he's complying with the ordinance.
But the ordinance has nothing to do with lands on the hospital property. It cannot. Whether
It's the ordinances in the zone, is it not? The zone, it sets forth the zone, it doesn't specify what the design is for the street or the cul-de-sac.
No, all the ordinance says is that it's vacated and they're going to create a cul-de-sac bulb, right? I'm asking him, as part of the proofs, let's cut to the chase. Want to cut chase? Under section 51B of the municipal land use law and under the RSIS standards, the applicant has the burden of proof to get a design waiver or de minimis exception, as the case may be. Their proof includes the fact that they need to demonstrate, and I'll quote it so nobody can accuse me of misstating it. 51B, okay, can grant such exceptions from site plan approval, and it's basically the same standard for RSIs, as may be reasonable and within the general purpose of the provisions of site plan review and approval, if the literal enforcement of one or more provisions of the ordinance is impracticable or will exact undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the land in question. I am asking this witness, is it impracticable under the municipal land use law to increase the size of the cul-de-sac bulb on the hospital property?
And I'm going to object again.
That's a different question, if you're saying it's an answer. What's your objection? Are you objecting, it's asked and answered? Because you said I'm going to object again.
I'm going to object because Mr. Simon has made a statement as his interpretation of the ordinance. He hasn't asked this witness a question. This witness has answered a question that it's designed in accordance with the ordinance. The ordinance attaches a map that shows the cul-de-sac bulb in the ordinance.
But,
Whether-
let me finish, because
Yep.
he asked a specific question, reading the statute, and he's asking, can you comply with it? It's either he can, he can't, and what are the impracticable issues? I don't think it's an invalid question. I understand your argument, and that may carry the day, because the ordinance may either be in, I guess it could be in contradiction of the statute or not. But it does allow for a waiver ultimately, so we may be arguing about how many angels dance on the head of the pin, but let him make his point and answer the question.
Again, is there any reason that literal enforcement of the requirements of the design standards in the ordinance are impractical? In other words, you can't comply, correct?
We've utilized the cul-de-sac geometry that was approved by the mayor and council in that ordinance.
So do you think that,
I'll let you finish. The design was set and we utilized it in accordance with the ordinance.
so do you believe that because you're utilizing the design in the ordinance that includes the hospital property, that this board is obligated to grant you approval for the relief you're seeking under the municipal land use law and the residential site improvement standards?
I'm going to object. You're asking for a legal conclusion.
Okay.
This is not a legal witness. He's an engineering witness.
This is the perfect witness to ask about whether, in fact, just so the record's clear, under the residential site improvement standards, that's NJAC 5:21-3.1 under exceptions, it's the same standard. If the literal enforcement of one or more provisions of the standards is impracticable or will exact undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the development in question. Same standard. I'm asking him as an engineer whether increasing the size of the cul-de-sac bowl so to comply with the ordinance and RSIS is impracticable. Yes or no?
Yes, because what we propose is in conformance with the ordinance.
You could redesign your site so to increase the size and move the daycare center somewhere else, correct? You could.
You could redesign.
Okay. And is there any peculiar condition pertaining to the development in question that precludes you from complying with the cul-de-sac bulk standards that I've identified?
Well, again, it has been designed in accordance with the ordinance that contemplated the redevelopment of the entire lot and the campus redevelopment.
Did the ordinance say anything about seeking a de minimis exception from the planning board, from the RSIS standards, or from seeking a design waiver from the planning board, from the ordinance standards?
I don't recall.
With regard to the parking area itself, up here in H2, are you aware of any breakdown between whether it's physicians, employees, visitors, parents? Did you do any evaluation of what the expected breakdown is to determine how long those people are going to remain in those spaces?
These could be for the doctors and the patients.
So a doctor may stay longer than a patient, correct? Depending on, right?
Mr. Simon, this is not the traffic and parking expert.
Okay, so
We have someone who will be
Right.
testifying later. I would just suggest you say those questions.
That's more than fair. Yeah. So, Is there, I know that Ms. Berger identified section 66.6 municipal land use law that talks about the fact that floor area is excluded in calculating parking requirements as the floor space. You're aware of that, correct? Under the municipal land use law, floor area is excluded, floor area of the daycare center, excuse me, is excluded in calculating parking requirements as the floor space, correct?
Correct.
Is there any capturing of any of the employees that are going to be working in the child care center in terms of parking requirement?
Again, I would suggest you speak to the traffic expert, and he would be able to address any of those issues for you.
Sure, thank you. The prior child care area, and I thought I heard last time, I probably didn't, I know we're doing a redo here. Is the prior child care area currently in operation? If you know.
I believe so.
Okay. And does it comprise approximately 16,000 square feet?
Mr. Simon, what's the proper as to the relevance of this?
Yeah.
We're here for the application review.
Well, I want to know whether the former one is 8,000 square feet and now they're going to 16,000 square feet. It's in terms of intensity of use. If the intensity of use on the site is increasing, it's a fair question for site plan application.
It's permitted regardless.
Just because it's permitted, the site plan talks about traffic circulation, ingress, egress. I want to know what the intensity of use is and how it compares to the existing uses. The witness doesn't know, he doesn't know.
So, just for the record, it is very similar in size, but I
Well,
do
you can't
object.
testify, all due respect.
Yeah,
You can either say yes
but
or
I
no.
do object to the question since we're not here as to the operation of the facility.
Well,
Is there,
his point is intensification.
yeah, no, but in Wendy's, in defense of Wendy, is there going to be an operations witness? Because if there is,
No,
well,
And what are you defending with?
That's what happened. I was hoping I was going to get the right answer.
there is no need for an operations witness.
Do you have a witness who's going to address this issue, or do you want this witness to address it?
No, he could ask the questions. I don't know if this witness can answer, but he could ask the question if he thinks it's appropriate.
Are you familiar at all with the current daycare operation at the hospital site?
No,
And you don't know how many square feet are devoted to that use, correct?
I do not.
You do not know in what location where that use is, correct?
Currently, the existing hospital on the south side.
So, but you don't know how many floors.
I'm not familiar with the operations.
And do you know anything about the drop-off or pickup associated with that operation? Currently.
Current, no.
And you've done no investigation as to drop-off or pickup proposed, correct? For the daycare operation?
Well, I testified that the operations was for the employees of the hospital that are going to utilize the daycare.
I wanted to say that.
With regard to the sidewalks, one from the playground area and the other from the child care center to Chadwick, are those two sidewalks required by ordinance or code?
Yes, I believe they are.
And what do they say about sidewalks from those locations to Chadwick?
For the emergency egress from those.
It actually says a sidewalk is...
The architect can get more into the requirements for the egress from the building.
Okay, but you know for a fact that there's a requirement for sidewalks from those locations to Chadwick?
Wait for the architect.
The architect.
I'll wait for the architect. And with regard to Are you familiar with the regulations regarding childcare centers, by the way? No. I'll wait for the architect. I'll look for the traffic person on that. With regard to the lighting waivers that you're seeking, same question I asked before regarding the cul-de-sac bulb, because it's the same standard. Okay. Is there anything about the particular conditions of the property that precludes you from complying with the ordinance?
The ordinance for the lighting with regard to the foot candles is in contradictory yourself, so you can't comply with the standard lighting design that functions properly, could not comply with that design. That's why we're requiring a waiver.
So you're saying that the ordinance standard is inappropriate?
Yes.
And do you know how long that ordinance standard has been on the books, as they say?
Do not know.
And do you know whether other applications have complied with that ordinance standard?
I do not know what the...
With regard to the access to and from Chadwick Road, is there any reason why you could not put a fence surrounding the cul-de-sac bulb with a gate for emergency access like you're doing for the fire truck? So that,
Mr. Simon, could you just start again on that question?
Sure.
I don't know where you're starting, access from where, access to whom, and...
That's fair. I'll rephrase the question. For pedestrian access to and from Chadwick Road to the child care center, what is the reason why you can't put a fence surrounding that cul-de-sac bulb to prevent folks from making those pedestrian movements, drop off and pick up?
We just don't think it's appropriate.
And why not?
We don't see a need for the fence. We don't anticipate pedestrians walking through there. We removed the walkway, but we don't foresee having a high traffic volume of pedestrians walking from Chadwick Road to the hospital campus.
You say you removed the walkway. There's still 2 sidewalks that lead from the cul-de-sac to the child care area, correct?
Those are for, again, those are for emergency exit only.
Okay. But is there anything that's going to serve as a barrier to preclude someone from walking to and from Chadwick Road from those areas?
From what area?
From the 2 sidewalk areas that you're showing, one from the playground.
They walk from the sidewalk from Chadwick to the play area, they can walk there.
Right, they can walk there, right? There's nothing to prevent them from doing it.
Yes.
Right? And you also you're installing, per the ordinance, per Ms. Berger, also installing a sidewalk around the cul-de-sac, correct?
Yes.
And so what is going to preclude someone from dropping off a child or picking up a child utilizing the Chadwick Road cul-de-sac bulb?
There would be no reason for a child to be dropped off on Chadwick Road. There are employees from the hospital. They're going to park in the employee lot for the hospital. There's no reason for an employee of the hospital to park on Chadwick Road.
And you're not, because you're not familiar with the current operation of the child care, you don't know whether, a caregiver, nanny, other parent may be dropping off a child as the other parent is working and then they pick them up at the end of the day or vice versa, correct? You don't know about that.
My understanding is it's for the employees of the hospital.
Right, but
Do you know the answer to the question or not?
No, I'm not familiar with the intricate
That's fine.
workings
Tell
of
us.
the
If
day.
you're saying you don't know, you don't. Unless you know.
I don't.
By the way, when were you first retained by the hospital to start working on this project?
I'm going to object. It has no bearing on his testimony.
Yeah, it's not relevant to the site plan application.
Excuse me?
It's not relevant to the site plan application, is it? How?
Well, I want to know what, as a foundation when you first got retained.
I object.
She's objecting, I think it's an improper question as well.
By the way, the Chadwick Road cul-de-sac bowl, that area, what zone will that be in? Or what zone is it? What is it currently?
So it's the Chadwick Falls adjacent to the H2 zone.
No, what zone is the Chadwick Road? It's a municipal right-of-way, correct?
Maybe he doesn't understand the question because I'm not understanding it either.
Is Chadwick Road, the cul-de-sac bowl, as you're looking on your plan, A4, what zone is that right-of-way a part of? If you know.
I don't recall exactly.
Is there any of your plans that would identify what zone it's located in?
Just the profit for why we're concerned about this?
Well, because I want to make sure, I believe it's in a residential zone, and there should be no reason why, A, it should be used at all for hospital property, and B, the ordinance is pretty clear that there should be adequate buffering between residential and non-residential uses and areas. And so that's why I'm asking the question. It has to do with the ordinance.
Do you know if it's in the residential zone?
I'm looking right now, actually, and it looks like there's an S there. R-S zone, so that's residential single family, right? Correct?
Point on the plan what property you're asking for what zone because it's a bit confusing.
No, I don't think it's, I asked, I said Chadwick Road. What zone is Chadwick Road located within?
Look, it's a street, it's a public street. So you were asking if the public street is zoned? A public street is not zoned.
So who?
Well, I'll defer to your experts, to the board's experts.
Under the zoning map of the township of Teaneck, I'm asking the witness, is Chadwick Road located within a particular zone, yes or no?
The lots adjacent to it are in the R-S zone.
And do you know whether that right-of-way is actually located in the R.S. zone or not? You know, one way or another? If you don't know, you can just say, I don't know. It's fine.
The R zone straddles both sides.
Okay, that's it. Are you aware whether, in your review of the zoning ordinance and creating of your zoning table, whether more than one principal use is permitted on the lot in the H zone?
I believe there is.
Okay, and do you recall referring to a specific? Do you recall referring to a specific section of the ordinance to support your conclusion?
I don't have the ordinance.
And you talked about the vinyl fence, right, around certain areas, and that it's wood, but you want to go to vinyl. Did you ever ask the residential neighbors what they prefer between wood and vinyl?
I did not.
And With regard to, you talked about the dumpster area, right? Where is that? It's up in this area? I'm sorry, Dan? Yes. Right? I'm sorry, for the record, the northern part of H2 in the northwest corner of the parking lot, correct?
Correct.
Is there a reason why you put the dumpster right next to the H1 residential area as opposed to an area internal, not so close to residences?
Dan, can you use the microphone?
Yeah, let me just pull. So
Wait, just say what you're referring, which plan?
I'm referring to A3, which is the site layout plan. The loading and traction doors are located, as we said, in the northwest corner. We located there for the purpose of optimum operations for the child care.
And so the dumpster's here. Okay. So how far is the dumpster from that existing dwelling to remain?
I have to scale it, that's approximately 20 feet.
20 feet between the dumpster and that residence, right?
Approximately.
And with regard to the lighting that you're proposing in the parking lot, is that lighting going to be able to be seen by properties, residential properties, I'm sorry, outside of the hospital property, namely Lot 7 and across the street from Grange Road?
I would believe so.
And what makes you, what leads you to that conclusion?
The lights that we're proposing and the buffer screening around the perimeter of the parking area and the distance from the Grange Road.
Well, so the fence is 6,
Right.
the lighting fixtures are how tall?
Approximately, don't recall exactly, I think it's 20 feet.
20 feet. So if you have a 5-foot fence and you have a 20-foot light fixture, how,
16 foot.
16, that's okay, no problem. How is it that these residential properties are not going to be able to see the 16-foot light fixture as you're shown on sheet 6 of 11 between, right abutting the H1 zone?
I'm going to object to the question because Mr. Simon is changing the size of the fence in his question. So does he want testimony with regard to what's proposed or what he's changing?
Well, I think the point of the question is a light going to show it? So,
I think the question was answered.
well, I think it's a valid question.
And I said what...
Well, let me finish. The expert can either answer it that he knows or he doesn't know, but it's a valid question from the board's consideration of impact to the neighbors.
But Mr. Simon changed the size of the fence in his question.
It's a foot.
Correct the size of the fence, it's 5
It's
foot.
a foot.
Is that correct? It's 5
We're-
foot high fence.
I think we're talking form over substance.
No, I was actually right. It's a miracle. 6 feet is what the plan says.
And you said 5.
Well, regardless, it's 16 feet, whether it's 5 or 6, it's going to be over, and that's the substance, not the form. So, can he answer it or not?
Yeah.
What's the question?
Again, I'll rephrase the question. So what leads you to conclude that I'm sorry, Dan, what did you say, how high the light poles are 16 feet? So what leads you to conclude that the neighbors will not be able to see 16-foot tall parking lot lights over a 5-foot fence?
6 foot fence.
6-foot fence.
But there's also going to be a evergreen landscaping buffer that's beyond the fence. It's right by the landscape buffer fence. There'll be a 150-foot buffer between the parking lot and Grange Road, which will also have landscaping and a distance of 150 feet. And the other thing is the grade of Grange Road is 4 to 5 feet higher than the parking lot grade of which the lights are on.
So, you talked about the grade. So, across the street to the, I guess, the northwest, from Grange Road, how does that go? It's higher, right? Right. So what's the difference in elevation between the location of the parking lot lights and those houses on the other side of Grange Road? Do you know?
I don't know the height of the houses on the other side of Grange Road.
But what's the, have you done topography across the
Mr.
way?
Simon just
I have not
answered
done
and said he
topography
did
of the
not know.
residential. I have not done topography of the residential lots
Okay.
across the street.
Okay, so you don't know the differences in topography. Okay. So despite not knowing the differences in the topography, you still don't think that we're going to be able to see the lights, correct?
Correct.
Regarding your test pits, right? To show the groundwater depth, right? Did you do? I saw you did like 4 or 5. Did you do any closer to the residential properties? Because I didn't see any. To determine what the groundwater levels are in those areas.
We did the test pits in the area of
Of your parking lot, right?
the parking.
Right, but did you do any test pits in the areas of the residences that you own, lots 8, 9, 11? Because they're the ones that are closest to the residents.
He said he did it in the
No,
area of the park,
okay.
he did not.
All right.
No jury.
Now, with regard to getting back to Grange Road, my recollection is, and I know we're doing a redo, that there was a stipulation of some signage that would be proposed as stipulated regarding Chadwick Road and the use of Chadwick Road. Do you recall what those stipulations were?
If you know, would be recycled.
Right. So I think one of them, and these are just from my handwritten notes, they may be wrong, that I have no parking or stopping or idling on the cul-de-sac or close to it. Is that something that the applicant would agree to as a condition of approval by way of signage?
If the municipality,
Well, I recall that was discussed and we stipulated to the last time, so I don't want to fence here. If we could just lay out what you think the stipulations about that were. We don't have a complete record, we're doing a redo, and you're either going to stipulate or you're not.
what I was going to say is, since it's a municipal road, as long as the ordinance or the town requires it, we will put in whatever sign is required.
Well,
That's what we,
it's
I
sign,
was
we'll go through what we think was.
And there also is going to be a sign at the corner of Chadwick and Grange.
Rather than going all over the place, let him just make his point and you can stipulate or not.
I think what Ms. Berger was referring to, again, taking her side, is that there was a sign, I think, proposed at the corner of Chadwick and Grange that said something to the effect of no trucks, right? No truck traffic or?
No truck turnaround.
No truck turnaround.
Correct.
Is that on the plan? He
Yes.
made it on the plan.
Yes.
All right, so then they stipulated.
Yes.
Right, and then I have, again, no parking or stopping, idling on the cul-de-sac or close to it.
Is that on
in terms of signage?
Did that make it to the plan?
I don't believe it.
That's not on the plan yet. This is John Corey, we're traffic engineer. It's not on the plan yet, but those items about the parking and I believe the no outlet sign were
Yes.
mentioned on the first time we stipulated.
Right.
We
With
have
regard to
no
the last
problem
one,
with that.
Do you stipulate that that'll be
Yes,
included?
yes.
So no parking or stopping on Chadwick? And then we don't have to address the other question about the Chadwick, no truck sign because it's already there. Any others?
Well, I mean, I think there are other stipulations, but I don't think that they have to do with Chadwick.
Well, how about this, the signage?
The no outlet sign.
Yeah, the no outlet sign, yes.
No outlet sign, is that on the plan? Did I make it up?
I have not seen it on the plan.
We have no problem.
Mr. Engineer, is it on? Mr. Law?
No, it's not on there.
Okay, so you stipulate that it'll be posted?
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, and Rob's looking at his notes, were there any others that you remember that didn't make it? You made some accommodations to the public.
So Kevin, let me just maybe for the benefit of everyone,
Sure.
I'm just gonna rattle off my chicken scratch to see if it helps everyone. So I have about the lighting ordinance and then reviewing that in 6 months, right? Full compliance with stormwater management ordinance and the DEP best practices, regulations. Besides what we talked about on Grange Road, no parking on Grange Road during construction. All gates will be locked at all times, and then figuring out who has access to those locks to unlock. Daycare entrance from the campus, not from Chadwick. No entry to the daycare building from the north side. I mentioned about the no parking, no stopping, no idling. I think there was a discussion about all fencing and landscaping to be completed before the building and the parking lot is constructed. I admittedly, wait, I was about to say, I have a question mark on that.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
reading
Yeah.
verbatim, but I
Yeah.
have a question mark, so I don't know what that means.
Yeah, because I don't think you could landscape a building before it's constructed.
Well, no, you can certainly do landscaping that separates H1 and H2 and put in the fencing.
There's a requirement in the ordinance as to when the traffic engineer will discuss it, but and landscape engineer will discuss it, but there are requirements when certain things have to be put in the ordinance, and we have to follow those requirements. And we agree to comply with that. And there are.
That doesn't seem to have been a stipulation, but everything else he mentioned, you stipulate to?
No, we didn't have a problem with anything.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Deal with the architect. So in terms of questions about the proposed daycare center regulation compliance, I should talk to the architect about that?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Just give me a minute. And you didn't do, I mean, I'm only asking because there's a residence within, what, 20 feet less of the playground area. You didn't do any type of noise evaluation. As I know, we're typically done for playgrounds adjacent to residential buildings. You didn't do any evaluation, correct?
I object to the question because there's nothing that's required for noise evaluation, so it's not typical.
It's noted. Can you
Well-
ask the question?
Well, we have not, wait. I'm just asking, this is a site plan application. You didn't do any type of noise study,
You have a
right?
question pending. Let him answer the question. You didn't answer.
Yeah.
Did you do any type of noise evaluation? No. And with regard to, you talked about mounting analysis and the water table. Did you do any evaluation as to, based on the results that you received, how that would impact basement flooding on adjacent residential properties? Including the residential properties that are part of H1.
Yeah, they were remote far left that they won't impact any other residential dwellings, no. The mounting out showed that the only possible impact of the building would be the child care.
So no basement of any of the residences in H1 are going to be impacted?
No.
From water, stormwater?
No.
Oh, regarding the porous pavement, have you done a type of evaluation about how long that surface lasts before you have to replace it?
It's a new technology. I don't know how long it lasts before I replace it, but we have to have a maintenance program associated with it that we'll have to abide by.
Have you done any type of evaluation about oils and other liquids from cars getting into the groundwater as a result of the use of porous pavement?
I have not done that, no.
And I'm going to wait until the landscape architect regarding tree questions. I got a bunch of those. I think what I'm going to do, Mr. Chairman, is maybe sit down for a couple of minutes and collect my notes and let other people ask questions.
Listen to the public, and if you have a few more after.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Just give me a microphone back over.
Yeah.
Anybody from the public have questions? Ma'am? Just want to be clear to all the members of the public, if have questions or concerns, it's not comments, it's not going off with the questions of this. You take it out.
Good evening. I know it's very late, so I appreciate you indulging me in a few additional questions.
Just give us your name.
Of course, it's Ayala Hirschhorn. Sir, I had a question regarding the
Just spell your last name.
HIRSCHKORN. With regards to the removal of the driveway on Grange Road, I know that the plan does show that it's going to be landscaped. Will there be an extension of the existing sidewalk along Grange Road to essentially buffer what is now the existing driveway?
There's a new sidewalk that's going to replace where the driveway was and go straight across.
Okay. And therefore, can you please walk me through how you're going to ameliorate the drainage on Grange Road now that there's going to be the additional sidewalk being built in that area?
So we're proposing the sidewalk and the curb. We're proposing to remove the driveway, install a new sidewalk, a new curb along Grange Road, and that the entire existing driveway is going to be removed. And there's not going to be any added stormwater to Grange Road from this application.
I understand. Are you aware that there is existing drainage problems on Grange Road and that result somewhat from the dip right along that driveway in the existing road?
I have not analyzed Grange Road's drainage.
Okay, then I would ask that that drainage be analyzed because I just want to point on the record that there is existing, there's a dip right at the edge of that driveway that causes water to pool from rainstorms and otherwise. And if there is not sufficient draining that's going to be put in when you install that curb, that water is going to collect on Grange Road and make the problem actually worse than exists today, and it will not ameliorate the issue, it will actually exacerbate it. So my question is what are you going to do to fix that problem?
No, already indicated he has looked at it.
He said he has it, he said he'll look at it.
So please look into that. And what is the, in terms of the gates along the child care center, are they going to be locked?
Yeah, I believe they will be.
And the entrance going from Chadwick Road to the child care center going to be locked from the outside?
Say that again,
The back entrance from the child care center, so the entrance that abuts Chadwick Road, is that going to be locked on the outside?
the gate?
No, not the gate, the door. the door leading into the child care center front shop.
You'll have to ask the architect the question as the mechanism for the door.
I'm just asking if it will be locked from the outside.
Well, I'm saying
I don't
you
know.
designed the building, so the architect can answer the question for you.
Thank you. And were you at all, did you at all analyze or listen to any of the hearings leading up to the ordinance?
I did not.
Are you aware that there was significant concern among the residents I'll use Mr. Simon's words, nannies or parents or other employees who would access the child care center from Chadwick Road from the cul-de-sac rather than using the parking spaces that the hospital was allocating?
I'm going to object to the question because he said he didn't listen to the tape, so.
So he can just simply answer if he's
I
aware.
already told you that he didn't
I'm not
know.
aware.
Okay, thank you. Can you walk me through the sequence of construction for the child care center and the closure of the Grange Road driveway?
Generally, the ambulance operation has to remain open. So the first stage would be when we construct that. There'll be more detailed testimony on this from the traffic engineer, so maybe I could just leave it for him, actually.
I think if you're not
Yeah,
comfortable with the
I think
sequencing, you should leave it to him.
I'll leave it to the traffic engineer, he can start more detail.
Do you know how long construction is supposed to last for the space?
I do not know.
Do you know whether there's going to be any enforcement to ensure that the gates that are meant to be locked remain so?
I don't think this is
So then you can answer.
What do you mean by enforcement?
Meaning, who's going to make sure that the doors are not, that the gates, both on the cul-de-sac and along the fence, remain locked as appropriately and not somehow tampered with or played with, or left open?
You mean police, or you mean?
Hospital, police, someone. Because the concern of the residents has been for quite some time to ensure that there's significant buffer. Exactly. Is there some sort of regulation, and what will that regulation look like?
I don't think this is a witness that could answer that, but I'll try to get you the answer.
I appreciate that, thank you.
If you want to call another witness, take somebody else to come back up.
Yeah, no, I just have one more question. And this may be something that you may have to get back to me, Ms. Berger, but I'm going to ask about security in general for the area, particularly the new H2 zone. What is the security going to look like from the
He's an
hospital?
engineer, he's not a street.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
May I also ask that if you have something that you could tell us about flooding, we don't have that information. So if there's something, you can
We're
call
going to hear from
us
other people, you can reach out to her
and
after.
reach out to us and tell us.
Anyone else? Thank you.
You just don't have that information, so if there's something.
Hi, my name is Ezra Katz. I live on Pennsylvania Avenue. I have a couple questions. One which is about the fence. So, can you point out where the fence is along the daycare center? And I'm specifically thinking about like Chadwick Road.
The playground fence is going to enclose the playground. And then from that point, we have a 6-foot solid fence that's going to go around the perimeter of the parking lot, tied to the existing fence that's on the west side of the existing parking lot.
Does it go, by the playground, does it go towards Chadwick at all?
No, it encloses it encloses the playground, it doesn't go towards the child.
Just around here.
I know last time, last meeting, there were some discussions about fencing off that area. It was more of like a recommendation, but I wanted to know if that was something that was considered.
We did not add a fence in the front yard.
Is there any reason why?
We just don't think it's appropriate.
Clarify, where are you asking for?
Well,
You're asking me to answer a report.
Yeah, so the.
You wanna walk up
backs-
there?
Yeah, sure. Last time we were talking,
I can't,
along the back of the building, there was a discussion about having this area fenced off as well.
So basically what you're saying from the playground around the whole building, there's no fencing.
Yeah, right now, there's no fencing, but.
So you're asking that the emergency access for children, if there was a fire or other problem in the playground or in the school, you want them to go out into a fenced area and not get to the street?
No, so there would be a,
That's an unnecessary reaction, okay? Anybody should have fence and then have a door, so let's work it out.
Jack, we can't really hear you.
Okay,
so-
sorry. From what I recall, I thought there was some discussion about potentially there could be a gate to allow people in and out, but it would discourage people
candidly,
from.
There's no record of what the discussion was. Your recollection is contrary to my recollection, but if you want to ask the question, is it possible to do that? That's an appropriate thing.
Sure. Is it possible to do that?
It's possible for the fact we just don't think it's warranted in this case.
And why is that?
We don't expect pedestrian traffic to walk from Chadwick into the hospital. Just don't, we don't think it's needed.
So it's the back of the building, it's the back of the playground.
But let's just clarify something. If somebody is not driving their kids to school and has their housekeeper or a resident of the house bringing that child to the house, and it's closer from that direction, they're gonna walk down that street to the end of the cul-de-sac and come in, and if it's not open already in the back, they're gonna walk around the sidewalk to the front of the building and come into that car.
We don't agree with that. We don't think someone's going to do that. That's not.
Were you gonna tell them that they're not allowed to, that they weren't supposed to do that, they can't do that?
The child
How are you gonna
protection-
stop? You have a sign that says, no entry in here to drop off kids? You get a ticket from the Kansas Police Department?
Well, we're having a sign to say no stopping or standing on the street. And we're telling all parents that they have to.
Listen to me. Let's be realistic. We're talking today, it's 2023. Somebody's up at the corner there, and there's one house up, there's not walking all the way around, and coming here, all around there, from here, they're walking in. That's reality.
Is the concern cars
So-
and pedestrians?
Right now, we're talking about pedestrians.
And I think
But I'm just saying that's
related because
It's reality. I don't necessarily say it's a problem, but it's reality, it's gonna happen.
In reality, it's a child care center for employees. Majority of the people are people who are working that day, bringing their child to the child care center, and they're going there and bringing it when they're coming to work. Is there someone who might have the day off and want to bring their kid, but they are employed there? Is it possible? But that's not usually what's happening. Is it possible that someone could try to walk through? Anything is possible, but
That's all I'm answering back to the reality. It's a possibility. It's a small percentage, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. That's all.
just like someone could
But
walk
it's a
off
small percentage.
over someone's lawn.
So you gave a fair answer and you explained it. You explained how it's gonna be. But the reality is to say it's never gonna happen is not true. It's gonna happen.
Hang on a second. So really the question becomes, if the exit from Chadwick is only an emergency exit, then they have no way of getting into the building.
They have to walk around the building.
So from the architect, is it an emergency exit only to get out from Chadwick?
Yes.
Yeah, they testified the last time that happened. So yes.
Right.
You're gonna be walking around the building, so it's just a question, if somebody is not working that day, and somebody comes and drives and parks and just drives in and out, because they don't want to go in, or they'll live close by and they're walking. Is it a small amount? I agree with you, it's a small amount, but it's a reality, that's all, so just basic answer. But just, I'll answer it to you, you can come back over there if you want. But I'll answer to you, the volume and the percentage of people that believe that would be extremely, extremely small and really not make an impact. But what I would say is that we can put in there, and I'm sure you'll agree to this, the same way that they're gonna look 6 months after the fact on the lighting and other stuff, if this is an issue at 6 months down the road, that our building department and you will address.
Yes.
All right, so we'll put that in there, it's simply that, so it's not a problem, it's not a problem. If it shows up as a problem, we're gonna deal with it. Okay? So, I hope that helps you and, yeah. I know you said that, so.
Well, from what I said-
Now you can jump and say.
But I do, a lot of hospital employees do park on the street, so it makes.
We're not looking to argue, we have another question.
We're hoping that the additional parking on campus will have that parking on campus now. We're hoping.
I saw in the plan that there's a proposed transformer by the daycare.
At the northeast corner?
Yeah.
The electric service for the building.
Okay, do you know approximately the dimensions of?
I don't know exactly. Depends on the final design of the building. What's that?
Is it surrounded by fencing or exposed?
There's landscaping around.
It's landscape.
It's supposed to be landscaped.
Okay.
And what is the reason for it? And like, I don't see that in a typical building.
To service the child care.
Excuse me a second. Where, can you point to it?
At the northeast corner of the building, on the hospital side of the building.
Would it be better if it was, I mean, that's a traffic area side versus the other side that's not. I'm just suggesting, I'm not getting involved in that all this time now, but look at this, so that it could be on the other side, which I think is much less, traffic-wise, people walking, going, doing, it's just safer for everybody, so.
The utilities are over there on that side of the building. That's why it's on that side of the building.
What do you need over there?
The utilities line comes in through that side of the
Services
building.
are on this side of the building.
The utility services are on that side of the building. That's why the transformers on that side.
Existing here?
Yes. When the architect testifies, he can explain why.
Put on your list. Next. If you want to let someone else go, we have something else to do. Anybody else?
Joey, good morning. I have 3 questions.
Okay, I got something.
Ladies and gentlemen of the public, I know you're looking for your notes. If you're not ready to move on, let someone else have a turn.
How many more people in the public want to speak? That's 1, 2, 3, 4.
You got 4 other neighbors that want to speak while you're looking at some notes.
Have a seat, we'll get time to, I'm running.
I'm not trying to rush anybody, but you have to be fair. If you're not prepared, don't step up.
I'm going to try to get your questions answered. The next person can walk up and be ready.
This is just going back to that statement about.
Back to the statement about not.
The first and last name, sorry.
Yaron, Y-A-R-O-N, Hirschhorn, H-I-R-S-C-H-K-O-R-N.
Thank you.
So this is really just one question and one point about the fence around the daycare center and that people won't park there. Are you aware that there's currently signs at Holy Name Hospital saying no ambulances to Grange Road?
I am not familiar with the signs that you're speaking of.
Okay. So our actual signs.
I'm going to object because he asked a question. Unless you have a question, it's not time for statements.
No, I'm explaining this. There are actual signs.
Did you have a question to ask?
Yeah, so, because there are actual signs at Holy Name Hospital that no ambulances go through Grange Road, and they go through there every day, particularly Holy Name ambulances. So signs alone are not enough. Only a fence will fix it. And so, is there any reason why you can't put a fence there?
He was asked and answered. He said he doesn't think it's appropriate. Your point is well taken.
Alan Rubenstein. Are you aware that there was extensive stormwater damage in subzones 1 and 2 in September of 2021?
I'm sorry, can you read that?
Are you aware that there was extensive stormwater damage to the hospital and subzones coming through the hospital in September 2021?
I am not familiar with the details damage from what you discussed. We did agree to meet with the engineers on site.
It's a yes or no?
No.
Are you aware of any steps that were taken by the hospital after that stormwater damage to try alleviating that problem?
I'm not familiar with the steps that they did.
Are you aware of the amount of damage that the hospital incurred?
No.
Are you aware that it's in excess of $20 million?
No, it's no.
Please, Ms. Berger.
No, he said no, and I did. Come on, next question.
Currently, are you familiar with the daycare center and its current operations anyway?
No.
Are you aware if it's used for people in the community as well as hospital employees?
I'm not aware.
He said not aware, so what do you ask the question, please? If you don't have any questions for him, you'll get the next witness, come on.
There is no other witness, this is an operations witness.
All right.
You were talking earlier about the executive order for the gravel parking. You're familiar with that executive order?
The executive order for what?
For the gravel parking lot that's currently existing on 60 and 70 Cedar Lane and other areas.
Or the one that was for the COVID, of the existing
Yes,
law.
purportedly for COVID, yes. You're familiar with that?
Somewhat, I'm familiar with that law.
Are you aware that there were requirements that there be landscaping in that executive order?
I'm not aware of that.
Was there any stormwater work or DEP work done in conjunction with that order?
I'm not aware of that.
I'm going to object.
On what basis?
It has no bearing on this application.
Parking lot, you can ask those questions then.
He testified at that, that's why I'm asking questions. I know you've heard a bunch of questions and a lot of us have come up and talked about fencing. And I assume more people will be asking you additional questions. Is there any reason why you won't stipulate to putting a fence there and trying to deal with some of the concerns that would be from the existing fence going all the way around to Cedar Lane? Would that be something
Ready
that
to
you
discuss. Next question.
All
All right, next question.
The point is, because the time is late, we should not be rushing people.
No, you're not answering any questions.
I asked the question. I asked
Go
the-
ahead, Mr. Schultz. Either one of you can answer to that one. Guys, don't fight about it, but come together, let's go. We've got 10 minutes. Let's go, get it over.
I wanted to clarify.
Could you just say your name?
Sorry. My name is Mark Schlussel, SCHLUSSEL. I just wanted to clarify what I thought I heard and just see if you'll stipulate that that's what I did here. You didn't state the hours of the daycare, but I thought you said it's basic daytime, typical daycare operation.
I don't think I said anything on the operations.
Okay. So,
When you're going to have a witness to this, that'll talk about the daycare operation, correct?
The architect.
So, let's go.
let me ask a second.
No,
Yeah. Wait, let me ask a second here, because the lighting, I don't want to get caught between two guys and not ask a question. Thank you. When the daycare is over and the children are gone, the staff is gone, I thought there was a conversation about dimming the lights or turning off the lights that surround the daycare because they're not needed anymore. Did I hear that correctly? Whenever that hour is, that we'll find out.
So there was when we talked before about the little light poles, we said there's a dimming mechanism on that pole, which the existing poles did not have. And that was so that they could be dimmed and certain lights could be turned off when they were not needed. The lighting testimony was going to be reviewed further from the board after the operation is over.
Is it necessary to have the lights on when you're not operating? And is that something that can be addressed?
There's parking lot lights that have to be on because there's emergency room in the back of the hospital.
Talk about the building.
Talk about the building.
The architect will talk about the
No,
building
we're
lights.
asking you.
No, there's no need for,
If it's after hours, you don't need to have lights on. Knowing that you have neighbors that are concerned about this, can you dim them or turn them off? It seems like a reasonable question.
After hours, not during working hours. And I'm not worried about the emergency room renting up, just the daycare.
The lights won't be on when the building is not in
That
operation.
answers his question. That's all we're looking for.
Which lights?
I think the daycare is what he was referring to.
I would like for the next time, maybe they could identify which lights they're referring to that will be
Oh, we're talking about the
daycare.
building lights versus the parking lot lights, and even the lights they have at the entrance of the thing, don't need to be on at night.
But once the building is clean.
Okay,
yeah,
another question. You mentioned relocating, I thought you said you were going to relocate some lights somewhere else on the campus, on the
Stuff, there was stuff on the street that they were taking out, or closer to the building. Won't be.
Can you just point on the plan where they're going to be, please?
Yeah, there's existing light poles on the Grange driveway that are gonna be taken out, and three of them will be relocated in and around the loop road to provide the program that.
Very close to the existing building, far away from you.
Thank you.
Your brother, Mark? How many David? Okay, David. Same last time. Yeah, you got it. David Schlussel, for the record. Good.
I don't have it. I'm sorry, David. Schlussel, same spelling. Okay.
Thank you. The lights we're talking about, including the ones that are going to be relocated, what sort of shielding will there be? And I asked, I know you said they're far away, but right now, for my house, right, so for my house, 6 months of the year, I do get some glare actually from some of the lights around the PR, so it's a legitimate question.
So the proposed lights are the main lights in the parking area.
No, right now I'm talking about, okay, those, shielding for those as well as the ones that are not.
So those are gonna be
new and improved.
the dark side requirements that we talked about.
The question is, yes, is the three that are going to be close to the building, which is relatively close to the ER entrance as well. He's saying sometimes ER lights during the year, sometimes the year, can impact toward his home. So how is,
which lights are you talking about?
the three that you're moving from the
The ones that aren't the new ones, the ones that are relocated.
The ones that are relocated are getting relocated along the drive.
The drive, shielded, I think you said there were 6 of them, or I think it was 3 or 6, but however many there are. How are you protecting the residents from flares from those not new and improved, not dark night or whatever it's called?
We're just proposing to relocate them along the drive.
Are you familiar with what the lighting is like and if it will go toward his house and impact?
It's our opinion that the lights are far enough away that it's not going to impact the residential neighbors.
Okay.
But they're not dimmable, correct?
They're not dimmable.
But he's saying when there's stuff right there. But there's stuff right there, emergency room right now, that doesn't impact. So it's in the same location as that. It seems what he's saying that they should not impact.
I agree that they should not. I'm asking if they
Well, is there something to be shielded that they were down and not out?
Why don't we look at it and when we come back, when he comes back next time, we'll have an answer. I appreciate the question, we can come up with an answer.
Anything else? That's all I get.
For him to guess, I don't want him to guess.
Okay. I understand, and there were some questions that were sort of answered, actually by Ms. Berger, regarding the operations, but what you say, if I understand it, is not testimony. I also understand it's not coming from operations to deal with how things are actually done around at the daycare center. Foundationally, we know people park on Grange to go to the hospital. I understand you say because it's new parking that they won't do that, even operationally. Not all hospital employees are going to be parked in the back. You have a ton of parking in the front, and many of them are actually going there for their final destination. It certainly is not inconceivable that they may choose to go down Chadwick, drop off, and then go to where they actually are parking, which is not in the back. So the question is back to the fencing again. You're saying 6 months, I've seen the hospital police
Schlussel, I don't mean to interrupt you. Your point, and the point of every neighbor is well taken. Something the board can consider and even impose as a condition. But the applicant and this gentleman has already said they don't think it's appropriate. We're not going to get, no matter how many times you ask the same question, we're not going to change your answer. But the point is not lost on the board.
Okay, but also 6 months, the hospital.
Say it again, in
Can I clarify something? Which is so.
No, we're trying to explore it. He's accepting it, see.
No, I'm just,
You can talk to him later, after. Please. I appreciate you joining.
And then fencing around the floor, we're going to discuss, I guess, the landscape, we're going to discuss that?
Yes,
Landscape,
yes, yes, we'll go to sketch.
Well, and I know you're not obliged to, but it will be helpful, just in terms of limited questions. We're not going to have operations, we are going to have landscape, we are going to have parking set. Any other, I know who to ask the questions to.
Traffic engineer.
Traffic.
And planner.
And planner. That's it, okay. So I will.
But I would say, if you have some questions, if you'd like to send them to me, maybe we could get your answers beforehand.
I don't think you can send them to you because there's a whole other matter here, and he's represented by.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Let's not go too far afoul.
So he's represented by council one matter and not this matter?
That is correct. It's not a problem, you don't have to argue with it. It's just- I don't want to have anybody get in trouble with the rules of professional conduct inadvertently trying to.
Yes, I didn't know.
Okay. All right, so let me, can I go to, all right, 3 questions, okay, quick.
Mr. Simons, your question?
Just one question. With regard to stormwater that moves onto lot 7 before going, I guess that's east, does the hospital have a drainage easement in its favor concerning lot 7? Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay. All right. What? All right, board members, I want to address the public here as well. Talk about a couple of dates coming up. So we're going to carry this and continue on existing existing board dates, plus additional dates, locations to be determined, because the council is dealing with, in March, extra meetings that they have, which are on our nights. As of February, we're going to go back to the township municipal building. So right now, we'll have notice go out about it, but our next meeting,
The next meeting
no,
February 9th would be the next meeting.
right, so our next meeting is February 9th in council chambers. In a minute, we're gonna make a motion to carry this to that meeting, and that's a regular scheduled meeting, okay?
Change the time of that meeting?
To get that, all right? So I'm gonna go through the dates, and then we'll make a motion to carry it. But right now, the idea is for this to continue. I'm gonna ask if people cannot talk, and if you need to talk on the hall. So we're gonna carry tonight's meeting to the 9th in council chambers, and it's gonna be at 7 o'clock. There will be a notice going out, making all those meetings early. All our future meetings, hopefully, with this board,
We're going to republish the board's meeting list to affect this so that we're compliant with the Open Public Meetings Act. Are you going to require the applicant to renotice it? I didn't know that that was the case.
No, we're counting it through tonight, so we don't.
There's going to be a notice issued.
No,
So I don't want the public to be.
we're just gonna, because the meetings are gonna be an hour earlier than normal, we're gonna send that out so everybody knows that. We're gonna re-advertise on our end as
Not, excuse me. You guys gotta talk on the hallway. I mean, we were quiet for 4 hours. You need 3 minutes. All right. But right now, I'm talking to board members. Let's just clarify what he takes and be good. Ryan, I'm sorry. Not Brian. Kevin, please go.
Kevin, Brian,
Attorney.
Doesn't matter, it's 12 o'clock.
Looking at
Board members, check the calendar.
February 28th, March 8th, March 23, and March 29, all at 7 p.m.
I'm going to assume it's going to be good for everybody, and if anybody can make one night to listen to the tape for that evening, we're going to send it out.
What do you need for the meeting, by the way, because because everybody's confused? How many, we're 6 here now.
No, we need 5 times.
So you need 5, so only one of us could drop out for any other meeting.
Correct. So, well, one of us, we have 7, we couldn't be here tonight, so we've got to move to the table. We have one more member who's eligible. We have 4 that have refused themselves. So, it's important that we all should be here. First of all, it's also easier for everybody to be here that have most of the day. So, the next meeting is a regular scheduled meeting, so we're okay with that one. And hopefully between now and then, everybody can review the date, email me back, email, we'll go through. If only one person can make some of the meetings, then we'll try to go forward with them.
And it's okay to listen to a transcript or read.
Correct.
Read the transcript or listen to the tape, just have the certification as well.
We pre-cleared these with all the witnesses and attorneys, and these dates are good for everybody. So now it's got to be good for both board members.
There's one quick technical question of the guys who really did a tough job tonight. Can we get a lapel mic, especially from Ms. Berger and a couple of the others, just so we're not dealing with them holding the mic and turning
We're going to
them.
be back in Cambridge, so it's going to be fine.
She still needs to hear everybody. Just if we're going to use a microphone, we're making ourselves crazy.
All right. Talk to me about that during the legal season. These guys aren't dealing with this.
Township-wise, we don't own one right now.
Right.
Township-wise, right now, we don't own one.
Okay. And if I bring one, you can use it.
Okay.
Will these meetings be on Zoom?
We discussed that last time.
We didn't really get an answer to that, so will it be on Zoom? Like, as a part of the public being able to zoom in to observe, not necessarily to speak, but to observe, just in the spirit of transparency?
So the answer is no. They never have been and never were. Zoom was something we did during that time. We weren't meeting back. Well, other boards are really doing, we're back to, and we discussed this at lunch that time we were in the meeting. Right now, there's no plan for Brent, did you give everybody this?
Yes.
And I'll send that out again to everybody tomorrow as
We're
well.
going to send electronic copies of this when we get it.
What?
All the stuff we're going to have.
Yeah.
We're requesting from both council, if there's anything that's being submitted, just submit to me in electronic format, so I can make sure that, because Mr. Plaintiff is sick, I can make sure the board gets everything electronically. Some members prefer in electronic form.
Understood. No, I'm gonna first do is open the welfare. Please have. Nobody want to raise their hand? That's something that's still is closed. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now,
Joe,
I'm not.
No, just a question.
No, I'm not. All right, I need a motion to carry to tonight's meeting.
Motion to carry.
Motion by Mark. Second by Howard.
And I assume the applicant stipulates that.
Yes.
Motion by Mr. Dunn, and seconded by quiet, please. Could I have quiet?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
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 Okay. So, meeting is carried for today.
February 9th, ladies and gentlemen, this is the announcement that this is being carried to February 9th at 7 p.m. in the municipal building. This is your notice. There will be no further publication required of the applicant. There will be no further mailings required of the applicant. This is your notice to be there that night when this meeting will be continued at 7 p.m.
Dan? You want to?
The question was that since we're having it in the council chamber, and we have the two screens that come down the front and back, they can view the laptop to avoid, the council. Over here, we have the room to move the drawings around the council, we spend a half hour trying to move the drawings around because either the council, either the members.
When you be in touch with Brian her and see if they can bring their stuff forward. Not now, before the law. All right, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Donovan. Second. What? Motion to carry. We did that. No, during the carry, okay. Motion by Mr. Donovan, second by Howard. Howard? Yes.